hero in black. The adventure begins. Batman Forever. Rated PG-13.
Welcome to Roll Credits, a podcast about connections both in film and in life. I'm Aaron.
I am Mandy.
Each episode, if this is your first time, we aim to explore a cast member, actor, director, or even a concept that ties a set of movies together. We talk about the history and the context of a movie and have some fun, while also discussing our own personal opinions about the film in question. This is an Armbar Studios production. For more information about all of our projects, you can visit armbarstudios.com. And we are smack dab in the middle of our Joel Schumacher arc.
Squeezed in the middle.
Exactly. Call us the cream in the middle of those two Chips Ahoys, because I don't have a punchline. But we're going with St. Elmo's Fire, The Lost Boys, Falling Down, Batman Forever, Phantom of the Opera, and the number 23. This episode, we are doing 1995's Batman Forever. And if you've never seen this movie, it is the touching and lurid tale of the world's greatest detective and caped crusader Batman, who struggles to reconcile his secret identity as Playboy Bruce Wayne in the face of blooming romance, terrible trauma, and the plot of a flamboyant tech-savvy terror called The Riddler.
You cannot, I can't stress how hard it is for me to not quote this one bit that the Angry Video Game Nerd does, where he says that the Batman Forever, it sucked back then and it sucks forever.
Every single
And I don't even
time.
feel that way about this movie.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I don't even agree. I just think it's funny.
I've said this multiple times to an embarrassing degree. I'm sorry.
So yeah, I'm sure you'll talk a little bit about the history of the movie and how it is Joel Schumacher's take on the Batman series, which previously had two films. Then I'm sure you'll go into a little detail about that. But I want to ask you a question, because I think we both have an interesting story here. I want y'all to know I had never seen this movie before.
What?
But yeah, for real, because the first movie that I remember seeing in theaters was actually Batman and Robin. But I had never seen Batman Forever. It was just before my time, because it was a PG-13 film. So what's the first time you saw this movie?
Okay, I thought you'd seen this one. Yeah,
Nope.
no. So of all the films we're reviewing for Schumacher, this is actually the one I had the most of a personal history with. My introduction to the character was, Batman, the animated series. I'm talking about Batman here specifically. So that would air pretty regularly on Cartoon Network. And, that's a show that blows me away the more older I get.
Oh, it's still so incredible.
Yeah, no, it's obviously a kid's cartoon, but there's a lot of film noir, storytelling, extremely impressive shots in it too. They really just knew that they were working with the Tim Burton film, and they were like, all right, let's fucking go for it. They had themes you wouldn't see in other shows, characters who get infected by diseases that ruin their lives. There were death. And, it was funny, too. They had episodes like the Christmas with the Joker episode, which has genuinely some pretty funny bits in it. I can't even remember how old I was, so it has to be I was younger than 10, but, I went over to my cousin's house when they had cable, and I just remember the first scene of Batman Forever started playing with the bank vault suspended in the air, and it blew me away. I was like, what the hell? They made a Batman movie. It was very similar to when I first saw that they had a Super Mario Bros. DVD at my local video store. I was like, wait, what? Nobody talks about this?
Oh, man. Yeah, it's really funny running into those kinds of things. We're still running into that stuff. We'll be flipping through Tubi, which is the people's streaming service, and we'll find a Street Fighter OVA we've never heard of, and it's pretty bad.
It was only once I hit adulthood I even knew that they made a He-Man movie. That's one of those things that feels like, it should have been at least as important as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all that. But,
Double Dragon was that for me. I didn't know they made a Double Dragon movie until long after I knew about every other video game movie. It's crazy. What falls through the cracks?
Yeah, I don't really have much more than that, but if I was a really big fan of the Guyver, for example, I'd be very surprised by the Guyver movies. Sometimes they just go ahead and make these adaptations and they don't tell anybody about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyways, I didn't even realize that the animated series was actually based on the first two movies, or that Batman Forever was a sequel to any of them. Like, to me, this was the first time I've ever seen a live-action Batman. I don't think I even knew there was a comic book at the time, I'll be honest.
And well, that's actually really interesting. Again, I kind of had, I don't want to say a similar experience, but as I mentioned, Batman and Robin was the first movie I remember seeing in theaters, and I know why we went and saw it. One, it was PG, so they could take me. But two, I remember very clearly my brother was Batman Forever's Riddler for Halloween. I don't think I ever saw him dressed up as the Riddler, but I saw the costume in his closet. And my brother's a huge comics fan. So, he's really the reason I have any kind of comics knowledge, is because when he moved away from us at one point, he gave me his huge box of graphic novels, and that's how I read like Batman War Games. It's how I read, the Marvel Secret War, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, because he had this giant box of Marvel and DC graphic novels that he gave me. And I remember very clearly it was underneath the Riddler costume, and he also had, I think, a tape of Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. I remember because of the green Joker face. So that's kind of my entire experience, and yet I had never seen this movie.
So I'll remember, like, this one really did affect me as a kid, and I think it did for a lot of people too.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about the movie The People's Joker.
Yes.
Just on the last episode, I believe.
So
that one right literally goes directly into Batman Forever and mentions about how it was sort of an awakening for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I can't really say the same for me. I will say it's probably because of this movie. The Riddler was maybe my first real Batman villain I was a huge fan of.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think as I got older, personally, my current favorite one is probably Poison Ivy.
Oh, I'll always love the Penguin.
Yeah. Penguin is fantastic, too.
Yeah.
To wrap up my real story when it comes to my first experience of this movie, I do want to mention that, after Forever, I did watch, Batman and Robin next, and then the first two. I didn't even finish Forever that night, but I just ended up watching it later before going back and checking it out.
You had a special edition box set of the DVDs, which we actually. I'm looking over to my left here, and we actually still have those. We'll talk a little bit about how we watched this movie when we get to the appropriate section. But I mean, that really just shows how these classic Batman films have been in your life.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The first two that I watched, the Schumacher ones, you see how spectacular they are with their colors and all
absolutely.
that.
Even Batman and Robin, as a kid. I loved Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze because, I was a kid and it was this blue guy, it's like, oh, that's cool. He's blue,
Everybody talks such shit about how these movies look, which is insane to me because,
we'll talk.
2020s, we hit an era where superhero films have finally gotten colorful again.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I doubt that we're going to see Deadpool and Wolverine anytime soon, but my God, at least they put Hugh Jackman in the yellow suit. So, superhero movies haven't always been this colorful. I mean, superhero movies before the Batman series, even earlier in the Batman series, weren't like this. As mentioned, this is the third one in the Batman series. Previous were the Burton films. So, I think it's time. Let's dive a little bit into our history. The last movie that we covered with Joel Schumacher was Falling Down. Tell me how we got from point A to point B. Hit me with the story.
So I want to say it's been a couple weeks in between the Falling Down episode and also this one. There's a few reasons for it. We did go on a vacation pretty recently, but even on top of that, there was a lot to research for this one. So there's almost too much to talk about in this episode. I'm going to have to simplify the story here, but I'd highly recommend High Top Films on YouTube has a video on Batman Forever. There's a few more that I could find, but that's the main one that I watched personally.
Okay.
To cover all the sources that I took from for this, a lot of this was magazines: Entertainment Weekly, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, The Morning Call, Den of Geek, Details, Vulture, comicbookmovie.com. There's Batman on Films, and then I did watch one featurette that is on the DVD. We're going to get to that one, I'm assuming. It was Shadows of the Bat, the cinematic saga of the Dark Knight. So I believe that one goes through all of the Batman movies, but, that specific one is about Batman Forever.
Yes.
And how they got there. So, let's go back up to the year that Falling Down was filmed, 1992, because, even though this is Joel's story, we can't actually talk about this movie without, briefly talking about Tim Burton's Batman Returns. Consider this like the dual narrative to Falling Down in that sense. As filming was going down for the film Falling Down, Warner Bros. Was also promoting their big blockbuster of the summer, which was Batman Returns. And coming off of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, and of course the hugely successful 1989 Batman movie, former Disney animator turned director Tim Burton had this string of successes under his belt, and things just looked very bright for The Dark Knight at the time. With the 89 films, they managed to hit a balance that did a lot of things at once. So it made kids happy, it made Batman fans happy, who love the comic, but were annoyed that the intentionally corny 60s Batman was how most people perceived the character. They were worried about Batman being played by Michael Keaton, but that was just because of the fact he was most well known for the film Mr. Mom at the time, which is, insane.
He was kind of Tim Burton's golden boy before Johnny Depp, because he was Batman, of course, but he was Beetlejuice. It was
mostly those two.
Yeah, mostly those two, but he was like one of the first guys, that Tim Burton latched onto, which is interesting.
And on top of all of that, it made the studios happy and it made critics happy, which was insane. Yeah. Siskel and Ebert, I'm sure you have a lot of notes about them this episode. They went as far as to say that the 1989 Batman movie was actually snubbed for a nomination from the Best Picture Awards at the 1990 Oscars.
Absolutely. They actually said they had a fantastic, and I implore everyone to go and check out this episode. It's 1989 Oscar Surprises. I actually knew about this episode before we started recording because I was looking into it for research myself when I was a little mad about certain decisions by the Academy earlier this year. It is an excellent piece of work where they bring up that once upon a time, the biggest box office success would get a nomination, but because the Academy has gotten to be such a game of can we juice these films' numbers, they don't feel that these big blockbuster hits necessarily need the help. And, it's still something you see today. I mean, every so often, we've gotten to a point where we are seeing a few more of the big blockbusters getting nominations. But yeah, that's how big the original Batman was. But I mean, more importantly, of course, they also talk a lot about Do the Right Thing, the best film of 1989, and its major snubbing. But it's a great episode. I really recommend everyone check it out.
They snubbed Batman and Do the Right Thing for Driving Miss Daisy.
Oh, God.
I will say the only thing that Batman 1989 got nominated for at the Oscars, of all things, was just, Best Art Direction, which is one of those, we don't want to nominate you, but we have to kind of things. And it did win that, but, definitely a step down from, Best Picture. It was a safe bet to assume that, Returns was going to be a success. They got the initial film screenwriter Sam Hamm on board, and you can actually find his original script very easily online. But once they managed to get Burton back, he threw about every single one of Sam's ideas out the window, and also Sam himself out of the project to replace him with his own writer. Daniel Waters, best known for writing the film Heathers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I love Heathers.
I do love Heathers. He has a very interesting resume, I gotta say. But yeah, and you know, I don't have any shade on Batman Returns. That is actually my favorite Batman movie, along with the Lego Batman movie. But it's definitely a very odd one in the entirety of Batman's catalog.
When I say I love the Penguin, I don't mean this Penguin. Nothing wrong with this Penguin. He's unique, but that's not the Penguin I love.
They let Burton cook, and you know he definitely did cook, but it's not the movie that you're going to expect.
Yeah, good Christmas movie.
Yes. So initially, Sam Hamm was planning to have Two-Face be the antagonist of Returns, and he wanted Billy D. Williams to reprise his role. But you know, Burton wanted the Penguin, studio did as well, and also Catwoman. So they just said, we're going to shove Two-Face into a later movie. Let's just deal with these guys first. All right. So even with the new screenwriter, Burton was considered a perfectionist. He actually turned down the scripts about 5 times before eventually settling on one. And then he brought in even more people for rewrites. Either way, because of that, you can really tell Burton's overall influence in the final product of that movie. And he was very vocal in interviews, talking constantly about how he never really cared for comic books. He's done this since 1989. And, you know, we mentioned An Evening with Kevin Smith on here before.
Yeah.
I remember in it, Smith's actually talking the story about the Superman movie he worked on that eventually got taken over by Burton. He mentions the interview where he says, anybody that knows me knows that I would never read a comic book. And then Kevin's follow-up to that was, which to me explains fucking Batman. But, you know, Burton didn't really have the love for Batman, but he did have a general understanding of the character.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that Burton is very, very good at, is kind of understanding the tortured outsider. The people kind of, you know, who have like these rich inner lives, kind of the gothic nature of it all. So that makes sense.
Yeah. He was, because of the success of the 1989 Batman movie, he was offered a lot of money and creative freedom because of how successful the first movie was. So all of this stuff that he was doing, totally okay under Warner Brothers' book right now. They're saying, just make us money, basically. So he was like, okay. Burton made the film into a tribute to 1920s German expressionist films.
Which, I mean, fair enough. If you've seen Beetlejuice or Nightmare Before Christmas, but especially Beetlejuice, you can see those influences. Yeah,
and, you know, he also got extremely violent with it, which, you know, set off the wrong people at Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And, you know, not entirely unjustified. McDonald's had a sponsorship with the film, complete with toys, and then parents were leaving the movie to demand their money back, and they also complained to McDonald's because they were like, well, why are you advertising a movie in which a man is bleeding bloody murder and then falls into, like, a river and gets carried out by penguins? Like, yeah, it's like a great scene, but also they're advertising this for, like, the 4-year-olds.
Yeah, like, you know, you're getting your kid's meal and getting the penguin. It's almost like a joke, like Saturday Morning Watchmen or like the new Jesus Christ action figure. It's like, yeah, now the penguin with, you know, falling into a river and dying action. You know, it's like, go get it with your single burgers and your order of fries, kids. Like,
I can't believe you just referenced Saturday Morning Watchmen. God, I haven't thought about that in forever.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a time capsule. We got to go into like the Watchmen episode one day.
I doubt we'll do a Snyder arc, but you never know.
Yeah, there's enough people attached to that movie besides him. We could do like Alan Moore.
That'd be fun.
The Alan Moore movies that Alan Moore never wanted.
That'd be fun.
Okay. There's a quote in the Entertainment article, I think, that sums it up best from an anonymous chief at a rival studio. If you bring back Burton and Keaton, you're stuck with their vision. You can't expect Honey, I Shrunk the Batman. So, the controversy really soured a relationship between McDonald's and Warner Brothers, and McDonald's had to put out a whole public apology and pull their ad campaign before the promotion was over. So that wasted money in the process.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize that it was so bad that they had to stop it early.
Yeah, no, the people were pissed. On top of that, Batman Returns had an actually higher budget than the 1989 film. Box Office Mojo says about $80 million compared to 1989's $48 million. And Returns made over half of what the original film did. So, that's not a good sign.
Not a
for
great
Burton.
sign.
So I believe what happened was once word of mouth spread of the movie's content, ticket sales began to drop, and then for all the hot water Warner Bros. Was in, it was pretty much seen as a given that they needed to replace Tim Burton.
It's really funny. Like, what a strange thing, because, I've seen Batman Returns, and it's, it's definitely darker, grimmer, all of that, but it's a little funny with the benefit of hindsight that it's no worse than, the Nolan films or the Batman.
I watched it when I was 9 or 10 or something. Like, I never really, gave it much thought, but also, again, I was talking about Batman, the animated series. That, to me, felt dark anyway.
Yeah,
so it was but, even still, credits to him. He didn't talk down to his audience, but also, that's not what the studios wanted.
Yeah, fair enough.
And in fact, Burton was talked to by Warner Bros. Right after this. And, before Warner Bros. Even said anything, Burton just said to them, I don't think you want me making a third Batman movie. So he was seen as the thing that threatened what Warner Bros. Was hoping to be a franchise. This is even what the studios, what the magazines were reporting at the time. And, really, who do you call when you need a replacement director or screenwriter in Hollywood? Joel to the rescue.
That's our boy.
And what happened is Joel was working on his first legal drama at the time, the very, very well acclaimed The Client. If we had enough episodes, we'd probably do that one, but we don't. He ended up being approached by Warner Bros. While he was on the set for that. And he was basically given the keys to the Batman franchise.
It is really cool knowing how much he did love comics from what you've told me.
Yeah, fully admits to being a fan of the Batman comic books. And, on top of it, he was friends with Burton, and Burton fully approved of Schumacher as the film's director. You can even tell in the final picture that they advertise Batman Forever as a Tim Burton film because he's the producer.
Yes.
That's how much Tim had faith in the movie, all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
And, sure enough, Michael Keaton was even signed on at first, and he was enthusiastic about it because Schumacher had a lot of really interesting ideas with it.
Yeah, I mean, by this point you said he had made The Client, he had made Falling Down, two very, fairly well-received films.
And let's not even, mention, The Lost Boys and Flatliners, two very stylistically comic booky films.
Yes. So he really was a great fit for this franchise, and it seemed like others really felt that way at the time.
In charge of writing the script was a screenwriting husband and wife named Lee Batchelor and Janet Scott Batchelor. Best known at the time for a script that was very heavily sought after but fell through, called Smoke and Mirrors. And then rewrites were eventually done by screenwriter Akiva Goldsman, who had just finished writing The Client for Joel, and then went on to write the films A Beautiful Mind and The Cinderella Man.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Beautiful Mind was big.
Yeah, keep that name in mind. It might come up again later.
Okay.
So, Schumacher's first pitch to Warner Bros. was an adaptation of what was his favorite Batman comic, Batman Year One.
Really?
Yeah, a comic about Batman's first year as a vigilante. Might seem a little familiar to you.
That is so cool.
And Warner Brothers completely rejected it.
Oh my God.
They said they did not want a prequel. They wanted a sequel to Batman Forever.
That is absolutely nuts that we could have gotten the comic that would eventually become The Batman.
And, and Batman Begins.
Yeah.
And, we did actually eventually get Batman Year One in the form of an animated film.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the TV show Gotham borrowed a lot of ideas from Batman Year One, specifically the idea to focus it around Jim Gordon.
Man, what times they change, huh?
But, Warner was very set on their vision for it. And Schumacher was technically given the chance to make what was his dream project here. But, the original vision was not what we eventually saw on the screen. And this was about the first sign of it, is them shooting that down.
Okay.
Now, you remember when we had the episode on The Lost Boys, we talked about how he wrote the script to be more adult-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And, we go to this movie, and this is seen as the kid-friendly Batman movie.
That's pretty funny, actually.
It is insane to me that Schumacher ended up getting the hit for all of this. Like, he ended up getting the blame for these two movies, in that sense, because... they couldn't be more obviously studio visions.
Yeah.
He's been on record saying that he preferred darker Batman, but the studio and Bob Kane specifically requested him to make something friendly to the advertisers, so he gave in. And I'd say it's probably about half of Joel's vision and maybe half of Warner Bros. And Bob Kane's. A lot of the film's visual identity, like the comic book-esque cinematography, the dreamlike depictions of Gotham City, the motifs, and even the choice of actors, that's all Joel.
Oh, yeah. His fingerprints, for all of this, his fingerprints are all over the movie, which we'll definitely talk about, which I think is awesome.
He was never much of a screenwriter. I think we can admit that. But he did a good job at, maintaining everything.
Yeah.
And that is what made him basically perfect for this. They could easily transition this into him. And then Warner Bros. Could keep feeding him ideas. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, all he had to do was just sneak his own ideas into there. Specifically, what Schumacher ended up taking the most from was 60s Batman and also 40s Batman comics.
Yeah.
Given the time frame, the inclusion of Robin for this made perfect sense, especially since, he was in the original script for Returns and then he ended up getting cut. Originally, he was just like a gang member that eventually turns on the Penguin.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
They did a better job in this one, paying tribute to the character.
Yeah, I think I like what they ended up doing with him in this better.
That said, there was one really cool idea that I'm going to get to.
Yeah?
We'll get to that. But, the original plan for the villain was reportedly going to be the Scarecrow, the Riddler, and also a returning Catwoman.
Oh!
So they were going to go from one villain to two villain to three villains with the third one.
That's a few villains.
Yep.
As we learned from Spider-Man 3, maybe a few too many villains.
That was before Schumacher was even on the project, though.
Oh, okay.
Before they did that, they were going to make a Catwoman spinoff, so it didn't seem like they were going to include Catwoman in this one. But a big lasting rumor is that Tim Burton actually wanted Chucky's actor, Brad Dourif, to play the Scarecrow.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
At a Comic-Con panel, he said he was never approached on it, but he was approached for the Joker in the 1989 film.
That would have been awesome, too.
There was precedent. Tim Burton really, really liked Brad Dourif.
Man, get Brad Dourif in anything. We got Jeffrey Combs' Joker. Get him to be the ventriloquist. I don't care.
I feel like he'd have to do a voice acted role at this point, just personally.
Yeah.
But, I love Brad Dourif, too.
Listen, they make enough of those DC animated Batman movies. They can get Brad Dourif in them.
Goldsman said on the featurette that, his job was to basically simplify the ideas and make them more psychological. And it was under him that they actually put Two-Face as the villain opposite of the Riddler instead of the Scarecrow.
Okay.
And
it is really funny that we would eventually get a prequel with the Scarecrow in Batman Begins.
I have my own issues with how he's portrayed in there, but at the same time, the Scarecrow was just a really cool aspect that they kept including into the Nolan trilogy.
Yeah.
So I'll give it credit in that aspect. I have love in my heart for the Nolan movies, but then I also have some dislike for it. But that's a story for another day.
Mm-hmm. Whenever we do our Batman podcast, our comics podcast, where it's just an excuse for you to talk about Batman and X-Men all day.
Oh God, don't tempt me. All right. Well, we're canceling roll credits, guys. I'm sorry.
Sorry, last episode.
Well, we got to at least finish this one for Joel. Joel,
do it for Joel.
So. Part of the creative decisions from Joel included the Batman costume, which reportedly made Bob Kane angry when he first saw the nipples.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell the fucking nipples in this one.
I could actually tell, like there are some, but it's really just kind of a circle thing. Like it's not like they're protruding or anything. I thought the Batman suits looked great.
Yeah.
Especially the one at the end.
I feel like almost the nipples were just like, a minor thing that was meant to match some of the motifs in the film, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
And then, the fact that it was so called out, Joel, as a joke, just made it a lot more obvious in Batman and Robin.
That's the kind of pettiness that you love to see.
Me too. And, there's actually a really good quote from Joel in response to Bob Kane being angry on set with Forever. He said, Bob Kane doesn't understand why Chris O'Donnell has an earring and Batman has nipples. I told him it's the 90s, Bob. Step it up. And then later saying, I wanted a very sexy, very sensual, very body-hugging suit. It's my Gotham City, and if I want my Batman to have nipples, he's going to have nipples. Fucking icon.
Iconic, dude. And that's, oh man, that's awesome. Good for him. You know what? If you want to make your Batman sexy, make sexy Batman.
Some people are going to be mad hearing that or like reading that at the time. I know there was probably some in the 90s who read that and got extremely steamed, but I just find it so fucking hilarious.
It's just funny.
Yeah, he's clearly joking here, and I have, zero sympathy for Bob Kane. When we do the comics podcast, we definitely need to talk about how we fucked over Bill Finger.
Oh, man.
So I don't even think Joel's choice to add nipples, skin tight suits, any of that was like even self-indulgent. There's definitely some self-indulgent decisions, but that wasn't at least entirely. There's obviously,
and even if it was, go Ace.
Well, we'll get into it, but motifs.
Yep.
With the new direction taken, Michael Keaton decided he wanted out, and with him out, they had to drop Rene Russo, who was Chase Meriden and was around Michael Keaton's age at the time. So they
had to recast Chase Meridian then.
Chase Meridian, yes. With that, they had to pick almost all the cast from the ground up at that point.
Okay.
To throw out a lot of names at you, people offered or considered for the role of Batman included Ethan Hawke, Daniel Day-Lewis, William Baldwin, Ralph Fiennes, and Johnny Depp. And I've also seen reports of Keanu Reeves, Kurt Russell, and Alec Baldwin, but sources on those are shaky.
Okay.
Before the role actually went to Val Kilmer, Depp was actually said to be Burton's pick, and I also have to imagine William Baldwin was somebody who was suggested by Schumacher because they worked together on the film Flatliners.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the reason that Val Kilmer was actually picked, Joel had just finished watching Tombstone.
Yes.
And while watching Tombstone, with Michael Keaton still on the project, he was talking about how seeing Val Kilmer in this movie, thought, man, he would be a great Bruce Wayne.
I mean, Tombstone is awesome. What a great movie.
And, I do think, spoiler alert, he does a pretty good job in this one.
Yeah. I think that he has
not my favorite Batman by any means. But...
Yeah, he has his issues, but I think that we'll kind of go into more depth there. I don't think he does a bad job by any means.
I'll say he's not the worst.
Yeah, he's not the worst.
So I don't want to get into all the casting options because I'd just be name dropping for every main character. And there were so many people who wanted to work on this project, is the thing. This was obviously third in a series of successful movies, and it's like the MCU nowadays. Like,
right.
You hear all these stories about this different actor wants to work on MCU because it was the big project. Consider this to be the MCU of its times.
Right.
So, Marlon Wayans was originally signed on to play Robin, starting with Returns. And when it came time to bring him in with Batman Forever, it was unfortunately Joel's decision to open up casting and said, Joel, man, I'm sorry, this is maybe your biggest fuck up.
Yeah.
This and this next one. So Billy D. Williams, they chose not to bring him back and recast Harvey Dent as well.
Oh, yeah.
That one not even ended up biting them in the ass for like even more reasons. I thought they were like great for the roles, honestly.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like, Marlon Wayans is great. And Tommy Lee Jones. I think Tommy Lee Jones puts himself in the role he's given.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit more about that, but I would never criticize who they got for Robin or who they got for Two-Face over Marlon Wayans and Billy D. Williams. But it is definitely an interesting, what could have been.
I have to think, in order to justify this in my head,
yeah.
The world in which we don't get the world in which we get Marlon Wayans as Robin is also probably the world in which we don't get the first two Scream movies. The world in which we get Marlon Wayans as Robin is probably the world where we don't get the first two Scary movies. So, 50-50. There's some good with some bad. And then Chris O'Donnell obviously played Robin. Tommy Lee Jones played Two-Face, who Joel had just worked with on The Client, and they got along great.
Huh.
Call it a little bit of nepotism, but, I think he saw in the role that Tommy Lee Jones would be perfect for it, and he just wanted to cast it just because he wanted to cast his friends.
Yeah, fair enough.
Finally, I'm sure that you may have heard about this as a kid, because I know I sure did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was found in several of the articles that I read. It was heavily reported that Robin Williams was the guy they wanted to play as the Riddler.
Man.
And he turned them down, so the role eventually went to Jim Carrey, who Joel had actually met when the two were both very early in their careers.
Right. And that is a fascinating choice that I think paid off. And I think, I think there's a lot of interesting things where, while I'm sure that Robin Williams would have been perfectly good in this role, I do think I can't imagine anyone but Jim Carrey doing this particular iteration,
Yeah. In many ways, this film was kind of like the new class for Batman. Like they were working with almost entirely a new cast.
Yeah.
And also a new director, new writers.
Isn't it fascinating though, that isn't it fascinating to think about where we were in kind of movies where you can get to the third in a series, and it is a series. They are still released in a set, the 4 movies, where they can just be like, yeah, we're going to replace the director and all the actors, and it's not seen as like a cheap, like, you know, like when a bad directed DVD horror movie does it. I guess it is just because it had the budget, but like, I mean, were there people like furiously stomping saying, you know, not my Batman? Like,
I bet WB was probably really happy that social media didn't exist at this point.
yeah, like, can you imagine this?
And on top of it, you know, I
nowadays?
think also there was a lot of people who were just extremely happy we were getting superhero movies at all.
Yeah.
We got to think about the fact that, you know, before 1989 Batman, it really was extremely dire. We had very bad Captain America and Punisher movies. And then afterwards, it took a little bit for them to find what was going to be the next big film to really succeed. The old 1980s, 1970s Superman movies and the Burton Batman and Schumacher Batman movies. And it ended up being X-Men, Spider-Man, those movies.
Right. It's just intriguing to think, like, could there have been a world where Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire walked away from Spider-Man 3, and all of a sudden Spider-Man 3 was, you know, much unchanged, but like, I don't know, whoever was big at the time, like, you know, Dustin Hoffman Spider-Man or some shit, you know, directed by I don't even have a comparison here, or like Stuart Gordon. You know,
I feel like it could only have happened in this specific time
Yeah.
frame, because I think they were deathly afraid of trying to do reboots at this point.
right. That makes sense.
Because they're like, oh, we just had a Batman
just
movie.
had a
They
Batman,
don't
we
want
can't
to.
do
They
it.
don't want to do this again.
Yeah, that explains that.
So there was a lot of egos running around, and there was a lot of trouble on set. Not enough that, you know, it affected Warner Bros.' decision to bring everybody back on again. Everybody they could bring back on once the checks came in. But just to go over all of what happened, I'd say the main source of conflict you can probably attribute to Joel's level of respect that he had for his crew, which is a very nice thing to have, but also it ended up causing a lot of fights on set because Kilmer was, as Schumacher called him, rude, childish, and impossible.
It's so funny to hear Schumacher say anything bad about anyone.
Legit, he loved working with actors, but his big issue was Kilmer was a complete fucking dick to crewmates. Kilmer was told these things by Joel, and, you know, he responded by not talking to Joel for 2 whole weeks while shooting.
That is ridiculous.
Joel went on record, like, after the movie had finished and called him psychotic.
Oh my God. That's actually really sad. It's like, oh yeah, I saw this guy do great in Tombstone. I'd love to have him in my movie. And then, man, never meet your heroes, huh?
You know, it seems like they got everybody back on for, like, the DVDs for commentary later. So, you know, maybe it's water under the bridge, but it definitely was a lot of butting heads at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it wasn't an isolated incident either. There were a lot of similar stories at the time from the set of The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh.
That's the one that it was originally going to be done by that one British director.
The one who did Color Out of Space.
Yes.
Yes.
Richard Stanley.
Yes. That's a whole fascinating story of its own.
That one literally has its own documentary about the film that never got made.
Oh, man. Well, thank God we have Batman Forever.
Yeah, and Joel's other major conflict was, unfortunately, with Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so what happened there is he hated Jim Carrey. He constantly made Jim Carrey uncomfortable. He even laid into Carrey off the set, saying that he didn't like him, he didn't find him funny. Just basically, fucking hated everything about Carrey.
Oh, that's sad.
God, and it does
That
suck.
is really sad knowing like every story about Jim Carrey from like Jeff Fowler, from Joel himself, like all of them talk about how Jim is like a really intense, hard-working actor who puts everything into all of his roles.
And I think what happened was, I don't want to speculate too much, but
Right.
I think the truth of the matter is Tommy Lee Jones kind of saw Jim Carrey as his rival in a sense, and this guy is opposite me, and he's getting more of the marketing. And
That's fair.
he might have just seen that as kind of bullshit. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that he probably should have apologized for. But from what I understand, Hollywood has a lot of these very competitive types. I guess that
Yeah.
might just be Tommy Lee Jones's personality.
Yeah, I mean, artists are a bunch of drama queens. Of all stripes, let's be honest with ourselves.
And, footage exists on the DVD that shows that everybody had a great time on set, drama and all.
Mm-hmm. Hey, sometimes you get stuck in Indiana for 2 hours.
Yes.
Sorry, we went on a road trip, went on vacation, and we had a bunch of nonsense happening to us at the trip. But then you look back and you're like, yeah, that was fun.
Everything ended up turning out for the best, I'd say. Everybody ended up getting paid. Everybody was happy to speak on this movie later on in life. And, that just makes me happy.
That does.
Once the film was completed, initial cuts of it were around 2.5 hours, which after test screenings was cut down to about 2 hours. And I have a little more to say on that front and what got cut, but in the interest of moving things forward, we'll save it for the end of this podcast here. I am going to say before we move on, there is a lot of both negativity and positivity that has surrounded this film and its follow-up Batman and Robin since the film's
Absolutely.
initial release. And people can say homophobia didn't play a part in it, but it was always a sticking point to bring up Joel's sexuality. Joel summed it up in the Vulture interview by saying, if I wasn't gay, they would never say those things.
Mm-hmm.
He also specifically quoted a Charlie Rose segment on Charlie Rose's show where he brought a bunch of critics to talk about how bad the film was for cinema in general.
Good.
And this was Batman Forever, not even the Batman a movie that everybody shits on to this day, Batman and Robin.
Yeah. That's unbelievable because there's a lot of interesting things to talk about regarding critical reception that I'd love to get into.
Absolutely. I'll say that Batman and Robin, that's probably the easily worst critically received Batman film at the time when that came out. But, Dawn of Justice might be the one film that usurps that nowadays.
Yeah.
Before we get into the movie, I would just want to talk about the rest of the history for Batman movies. After Batman and Robin, there was going to be a fifth Batman film called Batman Unchained, set to star the Scarecrow and then a version of Harley Quinn, who was the Joker's daughter, as the villains. And there was actually a cameo of Coolio as Jonathan Crane in Batman and Robin. That is the last remaining hint of that project ever existing.
Coolio.
Yes, the artist Coolio.
Beautiful.
I'm sure some are asking as well, why are we doing Forever and not Batman and Robin? And it's not because I'm only trying to paint Joel in a positive light, but between the two films here, I have more nostalgia for Forever personally. And then
I think it's more interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think this has a better story behind it, and this film also has a lot more defenders, and I hope you'll understand that as we get into all this. I find that a film with a mixed reception can be more fascinating than a unanimously good or unanimously bad movie. Because we can end up on like either side of that.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
And I mean, my stories and anecdotes regarding Batman and Robin, I can just say, I remember it as a kid and Mr. Freeze was there. Whereas this, I think, has a lot more to say. And I think there's a lot more to break down here.
I've taken up a lot of time going over the history and all this. I'm going to pass it along to you. I'm sure you have a lot before we get into our review of the movie. Tell me everything, darling.
Sure, absolutely. So what I think I'm going to go for is I want to bring you back to at the movies at the time, because I think that the critical reception is a fascinating thing here. You talked about, the Charlie Rose thing where people talked about it as though it was an affront to cinema forever. And infamously, a certain nostalgia critic made his bones on talking bad about Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. And
a bad credit card, you say?
Yep. Shrill voice and all. However, on the episode of Siskel and Ebert, at the movies with Siskel and Ebert, where they talked about Batman Forever, and this is a really interesting episode because they reviewed Batman Forever, The Incredibly True Adventure of Two Girls in Love, Smoke, Safe, and they talked about Little Women as their video pick of the week, and about the Cannes Film Festival. So what an episode there, because every single movie except Batman Forever got 2 thumbs up on that episode. Batman Forever got a split decision. So even in an episode, like for a really great week of film, Batman Forever got a split decision. And let's just go into the quotes here. Ebert started out by saying that Batman Forever is a great looking movie and it's entertaining, but the series keeps missing the boat. Batman is one of the most fascinating comic book superheroes and is about more than just special effects and colorful villains. It's a very good-looking comic book movie, but I think Batman deserves more and better. And I do think that's interesting because they would later go on to review in that same year Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which they absolutely loved. But Siskel followed up by saying, I had a strange reaction to this picture. I liked it while I was watching it, but as it was over, it didn't mean anything to me. As the days have gone on, it meant even less. However, I'm recommending the picture because I can't deny that as I was watching, I thought the dialogue was very funny. I thought Jim Carrey sometimes go over the top, but that's Jim Carrey for you. I also thought that the Nicole Kidman scenes were very appealing, and they do hint at the fetishistic side of Batman. The way they juggle the 5 characters was good. They're all given enough screen time, except maybe Tommy Lee Jones. And Ebert says, I cannot quite recommend this movie, but I do think it's better than the previous one. And Siskel said it has a lot of good scenes. He said there's no resonance, but he said a lot of good scenes. And again, split decision, because at the end, I liked it more than Roger. Good characters in a forgettable story. So thank you again to SiskelEbert.org for archiving this whole episode. It's a really interesting episode. I gotta admit, this episode also had, as mentioned, the incredibly true story of Two Girls in Love, described by Siskel as the first gay women's film with a chance to score with mainstream audiences and a breezy love story. So
that's going on the watch list.
Yeah, that's going on the watch list. Big win for gay cinema in this episode.
I just want to say, I think I figured out Siskel and Ebert.
Yeah?
Why they have such staying power with us. They have to have some of the weirdest fucking takes.
Oh, yeah.
Out of any mainstream critic. You look at what they really like. They have a hard time dealing with horror. That's like a well-known thing. But, that's not to say they completely hate it. They love shit like Reanimator, which, fucking A+ movie, but you wouldn't expect it from them. Mm-hmm. And then you see what Siskel likes. He loves very high-class art pictures. And then he also really loves action films. Everything else he could either love it or he could hate it.
And this movie is both. It has great action and beautiful art direction. What more do you want? And it's funny. That's a Siskel winner right there. Of course, he has to pull himself back from the, but that's the other interesting thing about both Ebert and Siskel, that their differences is that I always felt that Ebert was better at understanding, well, is this movie good for this audience? Whereas Siskel was much more of his own kind of man. But, there you go. I don't know. I thought that was a very fascinating take, especially when you consider what the modern perception of this movie is. Like, think about it. This movie, these are the two foremost critics in America, gave it a split decision, both praising the art direction and entertainment value, even if one said, yes, definitely see it, and one says, maybe not. Nowadays, you see that, and you think, oh, everyone hates this one, right? Or, oh, it's underrated, or, whatever. It's more mixed, but I think that if you grow up in a certain era without looking at the contemporary reviews, and this is why I love looking at the reviews of the time when we do this podcast, because I love looking at what are the predominant voices in popular film criticism saying about some of these movies, and it is different from the perception that these movies would have later gotten, sometimes for good, sometimes for ill. It's fascinating. So that is what they had to say. I do not think personally that the story is slight or unmemorable, but I understand where they're coming from with this. I feel that they fairly judged the movie on a really interesting set of criteria. And yeah, I just thought this was fascinating. What a fascinating episode. They reviewed this with the Cannes Film Festival and said, yeah, go see it. Come on.
Maybe not the highest praise that Schumacher has gotten from them, but at the same time, them giving it a thumbs up, that's still a positive.
Absolutely.
One of them giving it a thumbs up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
he's come a long way since St. Elmo's Fire.
Oh yeah. That's the other thing. It's so fun to see them go from, oh, I will never respect Joel Schumacher and I hate his guts, to, oh, Falling Down was awesome. A split decision on Falling Down and a split decision on Batman Forever, but in the opposite directions. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. And the cool thing about this movie, mentioning watching it, if you want to watch it, well, boy, do we have a treat for you.
Oh, boy.
Because let's get physical, because this is how we watched it. Right now, you can go to Gruv, Gruv. That's my recommendation. If you want Warner Brothers 4Ks, oh boy, that is an awesome company. They have crazy deals. I think they're Warner Bros. Distributors. But you can buy either a box set with all of the Burton and Schumacher Batmans in one box set, or you can buy each film individually. I did buy Batman Forever individually in a 4K Blu-ray combo pack. And it is a phenomenal release. It is everything you could ever want. Basically the most perfect release of this movie that you will ever get, when it comes to the theatrical, cut of it. Because you will get in this 2-disc set, the 4K disc, which looks beautiful, looks absolutely awesome. It was a little dark on our TV, I think, just because we have kind of an older TV, but for the most part, it looked beautiful to me. It has multiple English audio tracks. It has both Atmos and surround sound, and we have a very funny story. There was a time we were watching this, and the sound was so good. We got a free sound bar from your dad, as you know, and I installed it, and we were like, oh, let's test this out. If this sucks, we'll just disconnect it and we'll just go back to using TV audio. So far, it's been great. Very unique. But one of the funniest things is, as we were watching Batman Forever, the sound got so crazy, the music so loud, the bass so booming, that it shook the sound bar and fell off the entertainment center. So we had to kind of secure it after that. But so, hey, the sound, it sounds great. The dialogue was clear. The music sounded amazing. Like you could hear every part of this movie. So great audio.
3D Batman. It's like I can really feel Batman punching me.
And oh my God, it has so many special features. Joel Schumacher did commentary for this. So that's everywhere. It has part 5 of that Batman documentary that you mentioned, the Shadows of the Bat. It also has like every single DVD release featurette that they must have recorded for the other like special edition releases.
I'm wondering if like majority of this stuff is on the Batman Forever DVD box set that I got, because I remember as a kid that had a ton of special features.
I believe so. So they've moved it all to the Blu-ray, so you get the upgraded audio and video with all of this, all of the special features, and you're also getting Riddle Me This, Why Is Batman Forever? That's like a 30-minute documentary about the movie. You're getting interviews from both the actors and Joel and just various characters, people involved with the heroes and villains of the movie, talking about their character motivations. There's featurettes on production design, the construction of Gotham, the stunts, the visual effects, the music, 7 deleted scenes, a theatrical trailer, and the Kiss from a Rose music video. You cannot go wrong with this set. And I got it in a 3 for $30 pack. With Twilight and, something else. Inglourious Bastards. I upgraded Inglourious Bastards and got Twilight on 4K. And this for $30. You cannot go wrong with this. It is an awesome release. And we are so lucky that the Burton and Schumacher Batman films all have these great releases, and you can buy them in a box set right now.
I know why they don't give every DVD this amount of attention. It's because, Batman has a lot of lasting appeal. Yeah. Like, this is considered one of the top blockbusters versus, something like Almost Heroes.
Yeah.
But you look at this and you're like, if every DVD was as intricate as this one, I'd be buying like so much more Blu-rays than I already am.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And, we are full proponents of physical media. That's why we do this. And that's why I love to research this stuff to find out what is the best way you can get your hands on this movie and watch this with, great audio, video, and features. Because that to me is such a huge experience as part of this movie. And I think that as many movies as possible deserve to have this kind of love and care. And it's something that I hope we continue to see in the future. Like this is a shining example of a fantastic release.
We're still waiting on a version of Bottoms on Blu-ray.
Bottoms.
That has like anything on it.
Yeah. Kino Lorber announced it. Where is it, guys? Or The Straight Story. That was only ever released on DVD. You can buy it streaming in good quality, but you cannot buy a Blu-ray or 4K of The Straight Story.
Criterion. I know you're probably getting it. You're probably trying to make it happen already, but
please,
we would love you. We would love you if you just did something for us. Stick the winner for us.
Stick the winner for us, Criterion. You got us with Shape of Water, so and the Doom generation. So you're batting 100 here. Give it to us. So do you want to talk about the movie?
Hell fucking yes.
Okay, let's talk about the movie. Initial thoughts. I think I'm gonna have to become a Batman Forever stan. I'm sorry.
Thank God. And you're watching this in your 30s.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever seen this.
I watched this movie for the first time when I was like 8 or 9. I couldn't really tell you. But, I watch this and I see the Warner Bros. Logo just morphing into the Batman logo.
The way you described it, you paused paused the movie and said, "It just did a Quagmire toilet. I have to write this down." Why did you describe it like that?
Yeah, you've seen the gif of
Yeah,
Quagmire
you're-
turning into
you're
a toilet.
Not wrong. Here I am talking about, oh man, it's so cool that it starts out in color and then the WB logo goes black and white. That's really cool. Very noir. And you're like, Quagmire toilet. Quagmire toilet.
I just needed
Quagmire
an easy
toilet.
way to describe it. Really, what I actually just wanted to say is, hell fucking yeah, this is the 90s.
And yeah, and you know what I love? You mentioned Batman the Animated Series earlier. It does make sense that the Batman Animated Series was based on the Burton films because of the Danny Elfman score. And even this music still is so B-tass to me, which I love. It's just this mysterious, moody, swooping kind of bit of comical, entertaining. Just I love the music in this movie. It is awesome.
I don't know if it's literally Danny Elfman, like it is with Tim Burton and Batman the Animated Series. Definitely still feels like it.
Yeah, whoever did the music in Batman Forever, you nailed it, buddy.
And then in the actual movie itself, it feels a little different, but you're right.
But yeah, no, it still sounds absolutely great.
So, would you consider the part here where we are focusing on the opening credits really the first shot of the movie, or would you consider what we get afterwards the first shot? Because I'm going to talk about both.
I think that, the strong opening credits do make a great impression, but if we're talking about first shots, which is something that we've talked about a lot in this podcast, especially in the Joel Schumacher arc, I think you need to talk when the movie proper starts. By the way, the score was actually done by Elliot Goldenthal.
Okay, noted. Then I'm just going to briefly mention the opening credits here because they have a lot of multicolored credits.
Yes.
And they have a lot of close-up shots of the Batman logo, kind of Mortal Kombat movie style.
I love that. I really did love how the credits were color-coded. That was really cool. Because Tommy Lee Jones, if you notice, it starts red and then goes orange. So even Tommy Lee Jones's credit is...
oh, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
I actually missed that.
It's very, very evocative.
But because of the multicolored credits, you can also immediately tell that this is seen as a Riddler film first and foremost. Because what is the Forever in Batman Forever? It's green.
Mm-hmm.
Same goes for the Riddler.
It's funny because it doesn't actually say Batman Forever. It just has the Batman logo and then the word Forever in the opening credits. I do want to say one thing before we get into the movie proper.
Okay.
You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think I am. I believe this film was described as toyetic, which is what introduced this word into the English language because of kind of how it was made to sell the McDonald's toys.
Excuse me?
I believe that is the case.
Listen, Webster, Merriam-Webster, listen here, buddy. Can you confirm this? Can you confirm?
Okay. I am not quite correct. This did not invent the word toyetic. Toyetic was not coined to describe this movie. It was actually described to Close Encounters of the Third Kind and later the Star Wars films. But this movie was described as toyetic, so it does.
Now this is the trilogy: Close Encounters, Star Wars, and now Batman Forever,
and Batman and Robin as well.
I will say,
in fact, Joel was specifically told when making Batman and Robin to make it more toyetic. So there you go.
Okay, it definitely feels like it's trying to sell you toys, but
including
that was the times.
To quote the Joker in this opening suit-up sequence, where does he get all these wonderful toys?
Oh man, I really do love the opening here where he's suiting up.
Oh, I love
like
it.
that. It's kind of almost like Hot Fuzz style editing.
Yes,
like that's what it reminded me of. Just the like quick pace editing
the
as we see him.
The tightening of the suit, the Batmobile raising up, and it's awesome. It's really cool. I think that I can kind of talk a little bit about how I feel about a lot of this movie, which I think is very, very well evoked in this scene and in later ones, which is, I think, a big inspiration behind this movie is actually spy films. Like, think about James Bond, like classic James Bond, or those any film with an English guy and a watch, calculator, cell phone, Inspector Gadget type deal.
Okay.
Like, he has all these great gadgets, and there's a lot of love for this kind of tech and this gadget as he's going from going from point A to point B. And I think that there's definitely a slick coolness to this Batman. You'll find more of this in a later scene, but I do think that the difference between Bruce and Batman in Joel's eyes is kind of that interesting, sort of laid back, kind of cool nature of Batman. And I don't know. I just, that is my initial impression from a lot of these early kind of suit up scenes.
There were several parts in it that reminded me of specifically the 90s James Bond movies.
Yes.
Where, those were a little more over the top in the kind of the same way as Kingsman movies. Mm-hmm. So, like, I can completely see exactly where you're coming from. Part of it comes from the comics, and I'll admit that. And then I'm mentioning that so other people don't mention that. But like, on the other hand, there's definitely seeing it play out in live action. You do get kind of the similar vibe. Like, you are right, it is that. And
I think a lot of the lighting is kind of meant to really, really throw this guy into sharp relief. There's a scene early on, as Batman's kind of stepping out full suit, the lighting is shining from underneath him so that that he's mostly a shadowy figure, but you see his face like all bright, the part of his face that's available, and it's so cool.
God, there are so many times that I wrote down in this movie while doing my notes. Just look at this fucking world they built.
Yeah, the production design is so grand. It is so gorgeous. I think the only time it falters is there's one part where there's a CGI Gotham. Doesn't look great.
I think it might have even been on more than one scene, but it's definitely right as you're seeing the harbor shot, which you've seen in The Lost Boys.
Yeah.
As we slowly come in, like, you can tell it just looks exactly like the cartoon reboot.
Yeah, yeah. But, I mean, every time they're in the physical area of Gotham, there are a billion different fascinating details. And this entire opening sequence is all there to show off just how gorgeous the Batman suit looks, how great the Batmobile looks, how
and
good
we even
Gotham looks.
And we get a cute joke about Alfred offering a sandwich and then Batman saying, "I'll get drive-through."
Yeah, and that is the other thing. This Batman is funny.
They immediately establish that this is kind of meant to be a more comedic take.
Yeah, this is a
I
campy,
think is good.
Yeah, this is a campy Batman. This is a funny Batman. And I also think that's interesting. Going back to my spy movie comparison, my James Bond comparison, this is a quippy Batman. This is a Batman who has jokes. But only as Batman.
Yes.
And I think that's fascinating. And yeah, absolutely. And, we'll talk a little bit, speaking of campy performances, let's talk about Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh man! His intro, his intro with the coin flip. I was thinking for a moment, did I misremember this performance? Because yes, the makeup isn't convincing, but for the first few seconds, he does the coin flip and he's talking about you're going to lay your life on the line, and all I could think of at this moment was, man. Fucking, like, this was the scene in No Country for Old Men, where they get threatened over a coin flip, which, that was always, like, Two-Face's thing in the comics, but it feels so threatening here for, like, a few seconds. And then, like, he kind of breaks it to be a little more jokey, a little more hammy.
And it's not a bad performance.
No, it's not.
It's a lot of fun. So, well, I'll say this. This isn't Two-Face.
No.
We know this isn't Two-Face. This is Harvey Two-Face.
This is
a different guy.
This is Two-Face if he was in Batman, the '60s Batman series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody in that series had the exact same gimmick, which is, we're gonna kill Batman.
Yeah. And but I can't help but be charmed by a lot of things that, if he was like closer to the comics, then maybe I'd like him. I say like him a little more as if I disliked it. It's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
You kind of, I think that you can critique these characters for their, closeness or lack thereof to the comics.
I have a take.
Yeah?
I think that this would be more appreciated if we ever got a truly good version of Two-Face in live action.
Yeah. And I honestly think, and this is something that I was thinking about through the whole movie, in that, absolutely, this is very obviously inspired by 60s Batman, which we like. And it kind of has that same vibe as 60s Batman. 60s Batman was famously something that older parents and kids can laugh at, but younger kids will think is really cool. And that's this movie. My brother thought this was cool. I thought it was both. I love the camp. And I think a lot of that, extends to Two-Face, What separates this Two-Face from something like Brave and the Bold, or 60s Batman? Not a lot.
No, and that's the thing. Like, with the 60s Batman, they had, that was specifically meant to be the case. Older people would find it funny, and then younger people would think that this is cool, and they like superheroes and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's the exact dynamic, and I think the reason, maybe, like, a huge reason that nerds have... I'm a nerd, too.
Yeah, but you're right.
The reason that nerds had, like, this big pushback
Nerd rage.
on Batman Forever and Batman and Robin is because of the fact that they were going back to this era, because 60s Batman was so important, important in the pop culture for people's understanding of Batman, that everybody still kept quoting, like, holy bananas Batman, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whenever, 1989 Batman was being worked on, because that was just how he was seen at the time.
Yeah.
And, they got a few years of the Burton Batman, which is more emblematic of where 80s Batman stood as a comic book.
Yeah.
And then we were going back to this, and I think there were some people who just pieced out right here, because they were saying, this is not the tone that I wanted. And, the same goes for Batman the Brave and the Bold. I remember specifically when that came out, everybody was pissed because they had so many great years of Batman the Animated Series and Justice League, and then as soon as this series came out, it was intentionally meant to be a throwback to old school comics.
Yeah.
Same goes for this movie. Same goes for 60s Batman. It is definitely aimed more at kids, but older audiences can still find enjoyment in it.
Absolutely. And I really do understand a lot of the, I guess, chagrin to that extent. I can't pretend that I don't have similar feelings when I feel that a series that I'm watching or something has kind of regressed a bit, I know that, after X-Men 97, if they were to go out and just make more of, 2004 X-Men or Dark Phoenix X-Men, I'd be kind of annoyed, I get that.
The one thing I will argue, there are some people who probably believe that this was done unintentionally. It couldn't be more obvious that this was a fully intentional decision.
Yeah.
When you see, like, these scenes very early on, and then you see the scenes when it's just Bruce talking to Chase, or like when they're both like humans, like, you are completely right. I know you mentioned that earlier. But this is a very... and, it marries those tones, which I think is absolutely fascinating and hard to do.
Yeah, it's very difficult. And, I'm reminded again, going back to The Lost Boys, this is something I actually said to you as we were watching. The comedy in this movie is very emblematic of The Lost Boys. And it is very funny, and it's interesting to kind of see that. It's interesting to kind of see that comparison and that that Schumacher touch, as it were. In all of his movies, there is kind of an element of tongue-in-cheekness to a lot of it that I think actually really does work here.
So this opening scene, one of the first main characters who gets introduced after Batman, Alfred, and Jim Gordon, all characters introduced. The first real new character introduced, this might have been a little bit after Two-Face.
Yeah, it's after
was,
Two-Face.
Chase Meridian.
Yeah, Chase Meridian, Dr. Chase Meridian.
Chase Meridian, excuse me.
Yes, who was on the scene as a psychology expert for the criminally insane, or just in general for, as Batman puts it, wackos.
What did you think of her?
I felt that she's very obviously kind of the femme fatale sort of sexy love interest character. But by the end of the movie, I was extremely into everything they had going on.
I feel like the movie the movie tricks you into thinking that it's about Bruce and Chase's relationship. It's really about Bruce and Robin Dick's relationship.
Yes.
But I will say that I really liked her. I thought she was cute, and I thought there was some there were some really funny scenes with her, like her literally throwing herself at Batman after doing the bat signal. That was so fucking funny.
Oh, it was so funny.
I was just saying, fucking me.
Yeah.
I understand.
You're like the bad boys. You want to get under her cape. Yeah. And that's kind of, it's as, I agree with Siskel here in that, I found that there was a lot of passion and enjoyment in their scenes. And, again, that's kind of another sort of James Bond thing, isn't it? The Bond girl. I would say that she was a lot more of a character than any Bond girl, and has almost ever been. But I think that that's really interesting to look at those kind of comparisons and things, that sort of like holding a mirror up to these spy films and these noir films, because there's always a femme fatale in the noir films. Double Indemnity, think about it. You had the insurance broker and you had the woman that he was planning to run away with the money with. There's always that kind of choice. And yeah, it's fascinating. But I liked her a lot. I
think what really works is Nicole Kidman has this fantastic voice that she puts on for it.
Oh, yes.
Oh, so it's kind of like the old school 30s reporter kind of thing.
I mean, I love a good 30s reporter. I'm the only person in the world who loves Sky Captain in the world of tomorrow. So
that's me, Chase Meridian. Wasn't she in that movie? Hold up.
Oh my God. Did she also play the reporter in Sky Captain?
Am I going crazy? Hold on a second. Sadly, no. I'm mistaking it. Okay, I couldn't remember who was in it. I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, you're probably thinking of. Oh God,
I'm thinking of Gwyneth Paltrow. I think.
Yeah, you're thinking of Gwyneth Paltrow. Okay, but we'll move on. But yeah, no, that's speaking. But speaking of kind of 30s reporters. So there's the big scene, like the bank heist, where Two-Face steals the vault and tries to kill Batman and stuff with acid. There is a part where they fly through a giant eyeball billboard, like an AccuWash eyeball billboard. That's got to be a reference to The Great Gatsby, right? Like that was the first thing that came to my mind, was in The Great Gatsby, there's a famous like eyeball billboard that is emblematic of, maybe God is watching this town, or, Big Brother kind of thing. I mean, before 1984.
I completely believe that, either the screenwriter or Joel himself would have just made that call.
Absolutely. Like that, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm reading too far into it. But to me, like when you compare like everything else that like the atmosphere of Gotham and everything that it is, I do feel that is a West Egg Great Gatsby thing.
And that whole scene, you're mentioning it. So that was before we did the bank heist with the bank vault scene, or was that after?
That was after the bank vault, because Two-Face is flying the ship away and they crash through that, and that's you know when we get to the Statue of Liberty fire.
Okay,
and everything.
I wanted to talk about that one too, and there was also the scene that Aaron was mentioning a second ago with our sound bar falling to the floor.
Yeah.
The 60s Batman-inspired OST was just going ape shit here.
It was going so hard that our sound bar just collapsed. It was like we were so into the movie and the sound was so good that we didn't even realize what had happened. We just saw a bunch of shit fall off our entertainment center. Like, wait, what? And then we noticed the sound bar on the floor.
Didn't it happen literally as they landed the plane?
Yes.
Like, wow, these are some great sound effects.
This is 4D, baby.
Man, I'm glad we have 4K.
Woo.
You really feel it. Okay. Gotham has its own Lady Liberty with Gotham written on the crown.
There's so many hilarious touches of kind of Gotham as this. It reminds me of Babe Pig in the City, where the city, I know, insane, where the city that Babe goes to is this kind of amalgamation of every famous world landmark.
Man.
And you think about Gotham as this kind of every American city that has the Gotham Ritz. It has these giant eyeball billboards of Connecticut. It has, the Lady Liberty that they set on fire. It has the Gotham Bank, and it has GNN, the Gotham News Network.
I was so fascinated with all these statues around Gotham. It's obviously like a big thing. It's connecting Batman to the Greek mythology, Greek gods.
These marble statues in Bruce's house, in Wayne Manor, in just the bank vault footsteps, and in Bruce's suit himself.
It fucking rules. Speaking of Bruce, though, before we move on, so we briefly talked about Kilmer as Batman, just mentioning how he's not the worst, maybe not the best.
Yeah,
too.
I felt that his
Yeah, you really get a feel from him, I think, immediately that kind of gives you sort of what to expect from him with this scene and then the next one. So as Batman, I don't really care much for his voice. It's not as bad as maybe Christopher Nolan's Batman and Christian Bale and his voice. It's not like it stands out.
Yeah, and again, the quips are good. I respect that it's kind of quippy Batman versus stoic Bruce Wayne.
And then I think as Bruce Wayne, he plays it off a little more cool.
Yeah.
But also, I love that he's just he feels like kind of a mellow twink.
Yes, and in the first scene, and this is interesting, because I didn't really put this together. In the first scene, you see him with glasses, actually. And on and off, he sometimes wears the glasses of Bruce, sometimes does not. But I realize that he's wearing those glasses because it's in this first scene as Bruce where he meets Edward Nygma, the genius scientist who has invented television. Well, a way to beam television directly into the brains.
He invents augmented reality.
Yeah, he invents augmented reality. It's crazy because this is something we have now.
I was losing my shit as I realized that, oh my god, this is fucking Google Glass. They tried to warn us.
Yeah.
Joel, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Joel. Virtual reality, alternate reality, augmented reality. I do love that it's all television focused. I made a joke that EMN actually stands for Edward M. Nygma. But yeah, no, and so that's what's really cool is that, this is Jim Carrey's first performance as Edward Nygma, where he's sort of this really obsessed fanboy of
I think
Bruce
this is
Wayne.
his first major villain role, too.
Yeah, and it's funny because, I would say that, Siskel and Ebert compared him to The Mask, his performance in The Mask in this movie.
I guess that's kind of anti-hero, but...
But I was seeing seeds of what he would later refine into Robotnik.
Yes.
And I love his Robotnik.
Me too. Yeah, he does a really good job playing this guy who is just the most pompous fucking asshole in the world.
He's sort of pathetic. He's sort of sad, but he's also just very full of himself. I really loved this performance. I feel that Jim Carrey in this movie, when he's on one of the two extremes, he's great. I feel like when he's in full Edward Nygma mode, he's excellent. When he's in full Riddler mode, he's extremely memorable. I feel there are times where he's kind of in the middle that don't totally click for me.
Yeah.
But you don't spend a lot of time in the middle.
I feel that, yeah. Goddamn, God, he was so pretty. I gotta be honest. While he's playing the most nerdy, angry incel who's an Elon Musk stan.
Oh, don't be so mean. He's sad.
But he is like a guy who idolizes Bruce Wayne, but it seems like he's mostly idolizing him because, he's rich.
Yeah, he loves the idea of Bruce Wayne of, oh, this guy's the CEO. He must have made his own company, bootstraps, all that. When that's not the case.
He got his money from his parents,
who died.
Who died?
Yeah, but yeah, exactly, and that's its own
and
interesting
then I love,
kind of thing.
And then I'm with you. Like I love him, just getting a little more flamboyant.
Yeah,
I think we can just say it. Like,
the queer coding is off the fucking charts.
If the people were going to call out anything for queer coding, it's insane that they called out Batman because he had nipples and not the Riddler for everything.
For everything! Like, straight up, you compare this Riddler to any of the Disney villains that invented this kind of queer-coded villain idea, or Bruno Anthony from Strangers on a Train, which is based on a novel written by an actual gay woman. Like, this is a queer-coded villain through and fucking through. He is obsessed with Bruce Wayne. He immediately is like grabbing his hands, like the light in his eyes. He, every single thing. He is obsessed with both Bruce Wayne and Batman. Like, straight up, it's the flamboyance. Jim Carrey described it as a Fred Astaire-like performance, which I appreciate. I love Jim, man. I love
fantastic.
Hearing Jim talk about how he portrays his characters because he has such a smart, eloquent way of putting it. But 1000%, it's queer-coded. Like, come on. And us being giant queers, we appreciate that. But I don't think you can talk about this movie without talking about that.
Can I call it by the weeb term? Can I call it by I went to an anime convention for several years in my 20s term?
Yes.
Riddler is a yandere.
Yep.
Riddler is a fucking yandere for Batman.
He is absolutely a yandere for both Batman and Bruce Wayne, and then both at the same time.
And even Two-Face later.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It is great. It is great. And I really do think there's a lot that's appealing in his performance. Again, I don't think it's always perfect, especially when you're kind of in that middle zone. But man, there is a lot to appreciate. You can really understand why, more than just Jim Carrey mania, why this performance was very, very respected and very appreciated, especially by kids at the time, like my brother.
And I also think very early on in this scene, like immediately following the Riddler scene, we get one where Bruce takes a slide down to the Batcave.
Yes, this is another thing that I was thinking, like, man, this movie loves its technology, because there are these lights that are like flying past Bruce's face as he's like half in shadow, half covered in these lights. Again,
Iron Man literally like had this exact shit when they were
Jarvis
doing that
thing.
movie with Jarvis.
Yeah.
That was insane to me. But also, like, I had to think, like, this is also, like, meant to show you don't take this movie too seriously. You have to think, like, exactly how did they get the architect to build this slide from this room in Bruce's corporate building all the way to a Batman a Batcave that is right underneath his house. Presumably he didn't build it. Presumably Alfred didn't build it. Somebody had to ask a question here, right?
That's that eccentric old Bruce Wayne again. Hey, Bob, how long's this job gonna take?
I guess Bruce wants to see his fucking bats again. He wants to go to the stupid cave. I hate rich people.
Speaking of rich people and stupid shit, man, is the bat signal beautiful in this movie.
Oh God, I've always loved the bat signal. Hey, have you seen the first 2 Batman movies?
Yes.
Okay. I was gonna say they have like I've always loved how they handle it in the comics, but also in the movies too. It actually, like, obviously it's one of those impossible things. It's always too iconic to ever get rid of because it's so fucking cool.
Mm-hmm. There's 2 things I want to bring up. One, man, is Val Kilmer pretty as Bruce Wayne? I think it's very intentional that he's young and handsome. You know, because if you think about it, Bruce always is kind of meant to be a playboy. You know, but it's a very interesting performance. Again, one I don't think always hits, but when it does, it does. But yeah, this is, speaking of the bat signal, this is where Chase Meridian is the one who sets off the bat signal so that she can throw herself at Batman on the on the rooftop, and Batman goes, "The bat signal is not a beeper," and
I'm going to say there's probably about 3 women in the entirety of this movie.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
Sorry. But I do love the bat signal is not a beeper as a sign, just because, man, remember beepers? Pagers, man.
God.
We used to have to walk around with pagers. People would ring our pager and it would just give a, hey, go to a phone message. Imagine being able to text someone, but the only text you can send is pick up your phone.
It's insane to me that they introduced, like, technology into this movie that feels like bullshit comic technology at the time, and then nowadays it's like, oh yeah, no, that's plausible.
Oh yeah.
Like, they're coming up. We get Riddler's first kill. That's actually coming up, like, basically right after this.
The brain drain.
And the way they end that scene, they also explain away that the Riddler had somehow edited the footage to make it look like the person that he killed themselves by suicide.
Yes.
And it's like, that's one of those concepts that, you know, it seems a little silly now. Like, how are you going to do this exact thing? But
they're doing that now. Deep fakes.
There's deep fakes. There's AI. Like, if you can find a way, like, there's obviously probably flaws on it now, but
there's still manipulation that this is like very shortly. 1, he invented augmented reality. 2, you know, we can microchip and send signals to chips nowadays. Maybe we can't, like, extract thoughts perfectly, but, you know, we're getting to these kind of electrical signals. Like, this is all very plausible. And we can edit footage that way. But it is really funny that it's all kind of focused. I want to bring something up here that I thought was pretty funny.
Okay.
Kind of a coincidence. That we watched the movie Being There by Hal Ashby pretty recently. And it's funny how that movie is kind of focused around a guy who is raised by TV, whereas you have Edward Nygma, who's kind of also, in a sense, a guy, maybe not raised by TV, but very focused on who he sees on television. He sees Bruce Wayne as someone to idolize because he's been on TV. He is inventing all of this kind of television signal technology. You know, it's just kind of a funny little coincidence that we watched a movie based around, you know, one character who was, you know, raised by TV and one character who is trying to misuse TV, and you know, and both of these are kind of, in a sense, very satirical and biting films, and they came out, you know, 20 years apart.
I love that the Riddler was always kind of this weirdo recluse, is what it seems like. It gives him a lot of character to say that, you know, it didn't take him that much of a push, but, you know, Bruce kind of blowing him off was like the last thing that ever stopped him from just going fucking apeshit.
Yeah, and it's funny because in one of the interviews on the DVD, they actually mentioned that this is like, I think this movie is one of the first times where they got to really explore the Riddler's like full backstory, I believe. Or at least they are one of the first people to be able to put it on screen. So, yeah, I think that's really cool. I think that's a cool little fun fact.
God. And the scene that he does it, like, it's amazing the tone of this film that they're able to pull off, like, the first kill of the film, and it is both parts, comedic, but also it's a little scary. It's a little
Absolutely.
like intense.
So, like I was saying, there comes a part where Jim Carrey drops out of being Edward and isn't quite the Riddler and is just Jim Carrey voguing and being Jim Carrey in this scene. But there is a part where he snaps into sinister mode, and it is awesome. He is so good at that. Like, he is so good at being just a cartoon villain. And from there on, it's basically off to the races. So, yeah, it's awesome.
I feel like there was like, I'm completely with you. There's like maybe one or two scenes when he's first introducing himself to Two-Face that feel a little bit kind of like they're just going for the cheap "I need something for the trailer."
Yeah. Hey guys,
line.
Ace Ventura. Hey guys.
Hey, do you remember the "This is your brain on drugs" PSA?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, get it? Does anybody feel like a fried egg? Brain on drugs PSA, guys. Yeah, pretty much. But again, when they snap in and lock in, it's very easy to see why Jim Carrey was so memorable in this role. Even if I do think that it's an unpolished version of what he would later bring as Robotnik.
Oh yeah, no, like there's no comparing it, but at the same time, he does a very admirable job here, and then it later gives him the opportunity to kind of nail this character with Sonic.
And this is, man, you want to talk about like this. This is the big thing about this movie. It's very fast paced. It's very frenetic. It's very frantic. Which I think is, kind of, I would understand a lot of people being lost by how quickly and how stuffed full of stuff it is, especially because it's an over 2 hour long movie, but it's flying by at this point. And going back to the direction, man, like I cannot get over the production sign and how everything is shot, because it is just absolutely gorgeous. There's a sign. Like, you can just pick out all these details. This is the thing. I mentioned in the Falling Down episode how we paused during the phone booth scene just to see some cool neon signs in the background, and how there were so many, like, pieces of street art. This feels like Joel is getting to, like, reach into his love of this street art and background art and imagery and paintings that take up entire walls and lights and shadow from the Lost Boys and nighttime photography throughout his whole career. And he just gets to go ham with this because it is beautiful. There are so many times where you can just pause the movie and see a detail, like a sign that looks like a crossword. Why is that there? Because it looks cool.
If we've said it once, we'll say it a million times, really. Joel fucking nails both costume design, set design, and then cinematography so much, man. He does an insane job in this. Like, you're mentioning this. I remember there was like the whole Riddler hideout. Well, I guess his apartment is just littered with shit.
His apartment is just stuffed full of details, and this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, with Edward, like, in his apartment as this song is playing about hating your boss and wanting to kill him, and just, like, being just so devastated and depressed with the daily grind because you feel unappreciated and miserable, and this is after he has killed the guy in the brain drain.
And he has, like, some kind of circus robot.
Yes, those things always creep me out because I'm terrible with those animatronics. It's like those, those wizards,
tell your fortune
thing, but it's the Riddler.
Yeah, it's dressed up in the full, like, comic Riddler suit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like going and picking up, like, yes or no, or question mark and no, as it were.
And even then, like, there's a few scenes, like, we see them drive to Wayne Manor at one point. I remember they have a shot in between, I think it was two statues or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Like, it was a very picturesque kind of view, and I feel like that's what's so appealing to this. It almost looks like this was a film that was made in comic or cartoon form first, and then later shot in live action.
And it's
there's
super
no
funny.
limit on imagination here.
Yeah, and it's super funny because the DVD special features embrace that with the character profiles, because they all open with like a still from the movie drawn in a comic style, which I just think is cool.
They even have a few scenes where, the camera doesn't stand still. It goes in kind of a spiral. I can't remember the exact term. I think it's a Dutch angle.
Well, Dutch angle is sort of that sort of low, sort of exaggerated angle.
That's right. Dutch angle is when it's on sort of a side. I can't exactly remember, but it does kind of go around in a circle. That kind of reminded me of 60s Batman, too. They used a lot of that.
And you want to talk about incredible production design and the Riddler, the greeting cards and the riddles, the pop-up books. Those look amazing. Those look so cool.
It's insane. When we had the new Batman movie, we still haven't seen it yet, but we're planning on getting to it. Yeah. They did the whole thing where they incorporated elements of like the Zodiac Killer and that kind of stuff into him, but with the whole magazine clippings for his messages. And I thought it was fascinating that, all this many years later, 1990s, like we still have that. We still have like these things that, play up the fact he's kind of an insane, not really serial killer, definitely a killer.
Yeah, definitely a killer, but sort of just this deeply insecure, like really sort of flamboyant, sort of really unusual guy. It's such an interesting character. Yeah, and like I said, it's just so beautiful and such interesting film, and a little silly and very flawed in parts, but man, already we're not even like halfway through this movie talking about it, and it's so interesting. And this is before we get to what I would consider to be like the meat of the movie, because around this time we start kind of getting into where Bruce is going to Dr. Meridian for kind of analysis on these riddles that he's being sent to try and see if it's, if she can kind of profile him, it's criminal profiling. And from there you have this really interesting, and this is the thing that I do really like about Dr. Meridian and Bruce's sort of
scenes.
Yeah, scenes. They have this kind of mental game going on. It's not quite a cat and mouse game because it's not crime and detective, but it's that sort of thing where both of them know there's something going on there, and they're almost playing like mental chess with each other. And I enjoy that. It's very passionate.
There's so much fucking depth whenever the two of them are on screen. You can completely buy the fact that these two are meant to be kind of the couple of the story. They have such an interesting dynamic that still feels very mature.
Yeah. And it really is,
and it's something that I didn't appreciate as a kid either. But
yeah,
it worked very well for me on rewatch.
And that is really something super interesting in that, you kind of get this juxtaposition. This movie is all about juxtaposition, which is great because, I mean, by the end of the movie, spoiler alert, Batman does kind of spell this out for you a little bit. But it was stuff I was picking up as we were going in that, obviously there's Two-Face. He has these two sides. He is beholden to a dichotomy. Edward Nygma, he has Edward Nygma and the Riddler. You have Batman and Bruce Wayne, these two sides, and there's a constant societal pressure for you to pick one, and from there you have sort of Batman and the Riddler portrayed as these, or Bruce and the Riddler portrayed as these two sides of the same coin, where during the Flying Grayson scene where they all go, where Bruce takes Chase Meridian to the circus, you have Edward watching it on TV, and it's sort of this like, Bruce has this opulence. Edward has, his little apartment and his TV that he can watch on the world go by on, it's all these little like moments that are like taking all these different parts of every character and these two sides, like even Chase Meridian herself having this kind of on one hand, she's supposed to be a respected psychologist and criminal profiler. On the other, she's attracted to kind of the dark bad boys, and she has to reconcile that and figure that out about herself, and she's come to peace with it. She knows, it's, and this is kind of funny, Siskel talked about the fetishistic side of Batman, and there you go, just sort of that like appeal of the darker nature of Batman, or the lighter and sweeter and simpler Bruce Wayne, but it's very interesting, and I think that's something that using Two-Face, even if we can say that it was not a very good live action portrayal of Two-Face from a traditional sense, I think that it was very important that they use him in the way that they did.
Amen. Yeah, no. He gets probably his second best scene, with the flying Grayson scene too, I'd say.
Oh, yes.
We get the whole part where he shows off the coin in the bank vault, and then his second major scene was when he takes over the circus, and it ends up inadvertently killing the Graysons. By the way, the Graysons have the old school comic version of the Robin outfit, and I love that.
Made me so happy.
Yeah.
That made me so happy. There's so much about this movie where it's interesting to look at this movie, as what it is, because I feel that, in the thousands at least, there was a lot of, and even in, the early MCU, where there was a lot of, we have to make this realistic, where it almost felt that they were afraid to even reference anything from the comics or from anything past that. Whereas this, it feels like, yes, they have a different Batman. They have a different bat suit. They have a different eventual Robin suit. But that doesn't mean these things don't exist because they were ashamed of comics Robin or of Holy Hand Grenade Batman. They're not ashamed of that. And
Joel doesn't get
cute.
enough credit for being a huge comic fan.
Yeah, it threads the needle so well.
God, I'm with you. That made me so happy.
But
that whole scene was felt insane too. Do you agree with me? It had kind of the same vibes as almost like the sex scene in the Lost Boys. Just how it's very vibrant, very energetic, massive crowd, a lot of shit going on at once.
Yeah. This is something that we've noticed in every single Joel movie. When he wants to shoot a crowd or a party, he makes you want to be there.
I love that right as we're getting a trapeze, he's balancing so much shit between Edward Nygma, the Robins, Bruce, Two-Face, who shows up and kind of takes over the entire scene. And then the Two-Face's team introduces a bomb. He has henchmen.
And all of Two-Face's henchmen also have two-toned masks. And to describe this, there's a term in wrestling by wrestling fans that we sometimes talk about when it comes to the climax of a big wrestling angle. It's the fireworks factory. This scene is the fireworks factory. It is just explosion after explosion, metaphorically, including the finale, where after the Graysons die and Bruce looks up and sees Dick, and the sadness in their eyes as they lock eyes. What a fantastic scene.
God, how crazy is it? There's so much, I think, that should not work when it comes to the tone, but
yeah.
It hits you with these visuals and comedic humor, and it should be too over the top to really take seriously, but no, it just makes the emotions hit harder.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, I'll have to say this again. I don't think this is a perfect film by any means, but I cannot imagine not loving how adventurous and so sure of itself this movie is. To be able to do that. To be able to say, okay, here's a disturbing death scene. Hey, here's a tragic scene. Here's romance. Here's, sadness. Here's melancholy. Here's a crazy stick up at a circus. Here's a joke,
I'm going to say something insane.
Tell me.
Zack Snyder films are not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed Watchmen at the time when I watched it.
Yeah.
But also, I did not enjoy the Man of Steel or Dawn of Justice, any of those.
Right.
But, I will say, if nothing else, I appreciate the fact that he is willing to experiment and try and get his vision out there. Try and do kind of adventurous shit.
I mean, no other director would have made Sucker Punch. And whether that's a good or a bad thing, that depends on your opinion of the movie. I like it. But, that's the cool thing.
And this, if nothing else, like what some people see in Zack Snyder, this is what I see in Joel Schumacher.
Yeah.
He is doing basically everything right as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that obviously don't work up to this point. Again, we talked about Val Kilmer isn't perfect as Batman. Two-Face isn't perfect. He's kind of like a combination of Two-Face, the Joker, and then like a 60s incarnation of that. But, at the same time, for his vision, like everything is clicking, technically.
If you are on this movie's wavelength, you at least understand everything that he's trying to do. And a lot of it works great for me. So,
you want to move on?
Yeah, because Alfred gets a big burger. We're cheering, we're clapping. Never since Walking Uehara have we seen such a big burger.
So, all of Robin's family dies, and then in the next scene, Alfred gets a huge hamburger.
This is very similar to the snowboarding scene in Final Fantasy VII.
It's like Cheddar Goblin.
So basically, to explain that bit for those who haven't watched the movie, go watch the movie, as we always recommend.
I would not spoil anything, but we're referencing the film Mandy 2018. It is my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah,
highly
but
recommend.
All I'm saying is that Alfred offers Robin, Dick Grayson, who is currently staying at Wayne Manor, a big hamburger, and it looks delicious. It has onion rings on it. It looks awesome.
What is your opinion on Robin, by the way?
So, this is a tough one. He's obviously not really a Dick Grayson. He's a much older, kind of cooler character. I like that he's young. I like that he's kind of pretty, handsome. I love his, I don't know, he has a lot of great youthful energy to him. I once saw him described as more Tim Drake than Dick Grayson.
Okay.
What would you say about that? Do you think that's a fair comparison?
I think that's fair. I do think that combine Tim Drake and then like Nightwing, like he's already ready to be Nightwing.
And he references Nightwing. That was so cool. Like, he's straight up, he's like, well, what should my superhero name be? I should be Batboy or Nightwing. And that was popping off. I can't lie.
He has elements of Jason Todd to him, too. But,
yes,
the Jason Todd that wouldn't actually debut in comics until fucking ages later.
Yeah.
But, part of that, I think, Joel likes his bad boys on motorcycles.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I couldn't help but think, like, we come off of the Lost Boys, and then we have, like, another guy who's just kind of like the cool guy on a motorcycle. Yep. It's like, there's elements of, there's elements here.
Yeah, and he's right. But before we get to all of that, let's talk a little bit more tonally. If there's one thing that I love about pretty much every Joel movie where he does this, The Lost Boys, Flatliners, Phantom of the Opera, when Joel wants to use smoke and shoot smoky scenes, gorgeous.
Are you talking about the flashback?
I am talking about the flashback because you want to talk about a tonal kind of shift after, you get this nightmarish, like surreal, dreamlike sequence of Bruce at his parents' wake as a child, and it's sad and it's beautiful, and I love that the dialogue, you can barely pick out words because it's so good at how it's experiencing kind of this grief of, your ears are ringing, you can barely process what's going on because you're just so sunk into all of this, Bruce wandering through this darkness, there's mist everywhere, you see his parents' coffins, you see his father's diary.
And we get more of an explanation on this stuff later, too.
Yeah, and it's such a cool scene.
I love this because obviously Joel wanted to do year one. He talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
He actually talked in the featurette about how the flashback was sort of his way of getting to do the year one movie that he really wanted to do.
Yes.
There's a few moments that are told through these little flashbacks, and he manages to capture the emotions in them perfectly.
Oh yeah, it's so funny looking at these scenes, and especially at the scene where you first see the bat. That's just Batman Begins, man.
Yeah, no, like
I know they're drawing from the same thing, but you know, yeah.
And then also, they need Harvey Dent to be Two-Face at the start of the movie. So you see a little early on, they actually have a newscast where they show Two-Face's actual origin story, which, you know, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, like it's played on GNN, the Gotham News Network, which looks exactly like CNN.
Yeah, that was funny.
They literally throw acid onto his face, which is exactly the moment it happens in every version of the story.
Yeah.
Like he's sitting right from the witness stand. The witness is a mobster. He just tosses the acid right on Harvey's face.
Yep. Harvey Two-Face, as he's called in the movie, which I do find funny.
I love him in the animated series where they call that form Big Bad Harv.
Ah, yeah, Big Bad Harv. Oh man, that's fun. That's fun. One last thing about the flashback is talking about sound design and our sound bar again. The only noise outside of like the muffled dialogue and the things that come in and out are these like just these really unsettling low bass tones. I can only imagine like being in a theater, how that must have felt. I bet that shook you right in the heart. And it was already awesome at our house. So there you go.
So we get a couple. So Riddler takes a lot longer to get into the plot than I really remembered at this point. There was a lot more of Two-Face than I really remembered. But at the same time, maybe not enough to be as memorable, which is why I think I understand where people are coming from.
Yeah.
He does get a scene coming up right here where he does kind of the baby carriage bit where he pretends to be an old lady as they're walking down the street, and then it turns out, surprise, I have a gun in this carriage. I'm going to go ahead and shoot you.
Yeah.
But that always felt a little weird to me. That always felt like more of a Joker bit, but okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, it's kind of the thing where, you know, they really did just take a lot from the Joker to make Two-Face instead of just because of the comedic stuff. But you want to talk about something interesting because, you know, the Riddler, like, he sends a riddle. You know, there's been plenty of Edward Nygma here and there. But it is funny how iconic a lot of his Riddler looks were when he doesn't really get into those until very much later. But there's this scene where he's in his apartment trying to figure out what his costume should be.
I remember that.
And he's like going through
I
bunch
remember
of
this
names.
scene that we just watched from the movie yesterday.
Yeah. Puzzle Man. He should have called himself Puzzle Man.
Hey, and I noticed that it was on, again, another fucking Greek statue.
Yeah, exactly. He's putting him on these statues.
He's turning himself into an icon in the same way
just
Batman.
like Batman. And there's a really funny bit, or a really interesting bit, I don't know if you noticed, where he is kind of wrapped up in like, kind of, one of his costumes is like kind of sort of military gear. It's heavily armed. I wonder if when they were designing his look for the Batman, if there was a little bit of inspiration there, because he kind of has like kind of the fatigues and sort of the wraps and stuff that, you know, very similar to what he would eventually look like, you know, in his more Unabomber style look, or maybe they were both inspired by the Unabomber, you know. And it's just a funny coincidence. But, you know, again, that's what's kind of fun to look at these. I think, you know, coincidence or not, it's a little interesting detail to keep an eye on next time you watch the movie. So, yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. And again, I loved that his, like, creepy Riddler toy, every time he was going through names, would kind of do the fortune thing. And,
the fortune teller thing.
Yeah, and constantly tell him no, you know, until he found the Riddler.
There's so much like interesting cinematography just in the shot that always keeps things feeling so fresh.
Yeah, that like just this scene of him going through and putting costumes on a Greek statue on a computer screen is still so action packed.
I just want to say, so after that, we get a little more Two-Face, and it's time for the villains to meet. We get Two-Face getting revealed to have two lovers,
yes,
an angel and a devil on his shoulders.
Yes, inside one of Joel's favorite things to do, which is get a giant ass Art Deco hall and put a huge painting on the wall.
And the fucking building is split into two.
Yeah.
This is exactly what they would have done for 60s Batman, and I fucking adore it.
It was awesome. The wall is split. It's like a statue with two sides of a face, and the dinner table is split in half, and the angel has cooked his favorite meal, and the devil has also cooked his favorite meal, and they're two different meals divided straight down the line. It's fun.
I missed when they said their names, but apparently in the ending credits, they refer to them as Sugar and Spice. And I noticed that Sugar was actually played by Drew Barrymore.
How am I... What a selection here.
Nicole Kidman and Drew Barrymore in the same movie. Kind of
Absolutely insane. And that's the thing. He's again, Tommy Lee Jones, for all the issues that there were apparently on set, for all, his not Two-Facedness, I really like him. I really like what he's doing here.
Yeah, no, like, this was perfect. And his first interaction with the Riddler, I gotta be honest, they're kind of hot together.
Yeah, they got a thing going on. We love Yowie in this house. We just watched Hangman versus Swerve.
I can't fucking believe that I've become a Riddler and Two-Face shipper in 2024. But you know what?
You know what?
It's sometimes love is strange that way.
Can love really bloom on a battlefield? And that's the thing is like. At this point, I actually have it written down. I'm enjoying Carrie as Edward Nygma more than I am as the Riddler. But by the end of it, I think that they both, and this is kind of the point, is that both sides of him are so good, and that's such an interesting thing.
To jump ahead a little,
yeah.
I know we have like a little bit of scenes with Robin and all that.
The Kung Fu Laundry.
The Kung Fu Laundry is a great scene. I think the funny thing about it is they sort of highlight the idea that Robin is really like a better Batman at this point before Batman. Batman had to train to be the guy he is. Robin is basically ready to put on a suit. He just needs to be told, hey, buddy, just fucking come here.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, this movie, let's be real, it escalates so quickly. They Riddler and Two-Face go on this chaotic heist. Riddler invents the augmented reality, the box.
And that's what I wanted to mention here.
Yeah.
So after we get the introduction of the big device that Riddler has, and Riddler goes on a crime spree, there is a part where he's literally wearing a fucking tiara. Jesus Christ.
Come on.
It was... Joel, I fucking love you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
how did you get away with this?
How did you get away with this?
I guess it's just because, all the Disney villains and similar are gay.
If you make your villains queer, if you make your villains queer, they're allowed to do queer things.
Yeah, but if you make your heroes in any way gay, woo!
We're gonna have a talking to you.
But anyway, basically, there's a lot that goes on, and it goes very, very quickly, and that's not like an immediate negative. It's just kind of funny how quickly the Riddler gets kind of his claws in Gotham, and everyone buys the box from I think Nigma Enterprises. And
that's sort of the big plot shift over here is Two-Face and Riddler have this big TV invention here that's going to take over Gotham.
Yeah. And from there you have, again, just like, and I mentioned it before, but, in Dr. Meridian's office, there's this scene where on her wall is just this huge airbrushed classical piece of Renaissance art. and you have, you know, Two-Face's hideout, and it is just like the Lost Boys in that giant picture of Jim Morrison. I think that Joel really enjoys having figures lurking in the background at all times, like the art. You know, you think about in St. Elmo's Fire, the apartment and those giant paintings. You know, you think about you know, in Falling Down, the mural of Jesus that watches over the entire gang shooting scene. I think that there's something there where Joel really loves to highlight this kind of stuff, that we are being seen by, you know, outside forces, perhaps. I don't know.
Joel, to me, if I was to really sum up Joel at this point, he's such a fucking empathetic kind of person, because there was so many cases where, you know, they talk about how much he loves working with actors, how much he will defend his actors and his crewmates for fucking everything versus the studio executives. Because of that, I think that Joel also applied that to his characters. He constantly thought of every single character, what their room looks like, what their interests are, everything. And I fucking adore that shit from him, man.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of extremely memorable art and also cool scenes and everything, so Robin steals the Batmobile.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. And then we get to maybe the best scene in the entire fucking movie when he finishes driving it. Holy hell.
Just a giant gang war in like a laser tag blacklight alleyway where Robin is doing all this awesome like martial arts. One of the gang members looks like Cardinal Copia from the band Ghost.
Yeah, fucking Papa Emeritus.
Or
what
like
the
Papa
shit?
Emeritus, yeah.
It was crazy. I said that exact thing to you. I screamed like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, it's like the skull paint, but it's very specific with the blacks and the whites. But yeah, it looks great, and I love all the paint. Everything's like glowing in this neon laser tag, like yeah.
I think about how hard it was to like do this scene, because you have to think, in order to get everybody in glow in the dark paint, like the room to be just dark enough, everything, and for all this to not be in any way CGI,
and it has
like,
to look like an alleyway outside as well, and a party and a rave, and it does.
This would be fucking impossible to do in the 70s, and it would be impossible to do in the fucking 2010s and 2020s, because they're like, just use CGI for it.
Yeah.
Like, this could only have happened within maybe 2, maybe 3 decade span at the very most.
Yeah. It looks incredible.
God damn, I loved it so much.
And it's fun, man. And there's like a scene where like Robin's just a really fun character, you know, and he rescues a girl and he gets to kiss her, and it's like, it's funny, it's romantic, it's enjoyable. It's there's energy to it that I really, really love. Like, it's such a vibe.
You ready to move on? Do you have anything more to say on the scene?
Nothing more to say.
Well,
other than I really love the Bruce and Dick and Alfred. Like, they all have such great, interesting chemistry and relationships with each other.
So, I know that Joel was on a Western kick in the 90s, which, to be fair, Hollywood itself was on a Western kick in the 90s between Tombstone and the other movie I'm about to reference. There's a whole talk from Bruce and Robin about getting revenge. Also, there was, like, attached to this, this is before we get to that. Dick punches Bruce once he realized that Bruce is Batman, and Batman says, if Bruce Wayne could have given his life for your family, he would have. And that is probably one of the most chilling lines from Val Kilmer in the entire movie.
Yeah, that's probably his best line. Yeah.
But, you know, there's also a talk right afterwards where Batman and Robin talk about how Robin wants to get revenge and kill Two-Face for everything. And then Batman's response to it is just, does it stop there? He gets into a lot of really like deep psychological talk on it. It's something that, you know, works very well at the time. They explain it in a way that I think works for kids too. but also it reminds me about the movie Unforgiven and how that movie featured the young kid who ends up teaming with the like grizzled Western vet, and he's trying to get revenge and says, "Oh, I can kill people. I'm like already like a known killer," and it's obvious he's super unconfident with it, and it's only after he's already killed his first person that he just fucking breaks down afterwards, realizing everything. I hope I'm not spoiling this movie for anybody, by the way.
Yeah, but you know.
But the movie Unforgiven, Joel fucking talked about it in the Falling Down interview, saying that it was the best movie that he saw that year.
Yeah.
So I have to think that like it had to have been an influence two films later when they need kind of a big theme for Robin, like a big arc for him. It's kind of him overcoming his sort of need necessary for revenge, or trying to figure out how to exact his revenge.
Yeah, and sort of like this sort of unhealthy coping of dealing with your grief. And that's, and that's something that I think this whole movie is, because around this time is when I started realizing that Two-Face's presence in the movie was sort of reflecting the two sides of every single character in this movie, which I thought was really, really cool.
Batman Dual Destinies.
And then we get to the Ritz Gotham and the Edward Nygma Gala, where he unveils the box. And, oh, this rocks.
Man, this is the scene where it really hit me that Joel just understood the spectacle of film. I had a high thought, well, not being high, which was Joel understands film more than anybody else around this time frame.
Mm-hmm. You need a film that and maybe it helps that we had such good audio. Maybe it helps that we were watching on such a beautiful copy, with the 4K. But man, you want to talk about a movie that sounds and looks so good and is being used to perfection to give you a world that you're never going to see in real life,
Fucking amazing. By the way, I just want to thank a friend of the podcast we mentioned before, James of the Teen Titans Recap Podcast, The Last Slice of Pizza, for bringing this to my attention. At the gala, there's an extra with white hair and wireframe glasses, and that is former Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's Lehy, who has cameoed in a total of 5 Batman movies. You would best recognize him as a Wayne Enterprise member who gets threatened by the Joker in The Dark Knight. One of those, how I got these scars scenes.
Yeah.
Knives directly up to him. That is the guy.
So why
he looks exactly the same in all of them. He is a huge Batman film, and they just let him onto the set as an extra in all of these movies.
He's just a huge Batman fan. And
yeah.
That's so funny.
He was in this movie, and Batman and Robin. He was in 2 of the Nolan movies, and then he was also in Dawn of Justice.
Good for him.
Yeah, no. And apparently he donated all the movie he got from those appearances to the library where he first learned to read. So, fucking great shit there.
Yeah, get all the money and give it to the library. That's great. That's great.
You mentioned that Robin mentioned Nightwing.
Yeah.
Around this point. We're about 1 hour and 15 minutes in to the movie.
Yeah.
And it fucking flew by for me. I'm just going to be honest.
It is super stuffed and so much happens. But man, you cannot say that it ever gets boring, which I appreciate. Yeah, it's really cool. I really love the gala scene because it reminds me of, this is a really deep pull, but there's this FMV game that only got a limited release. It's called Mode. And if you're curious about this, check out Super Great Friends Let's Play of it. It is excellent. And this is what the gala kind of reminds me of just this sort of big party where a major businessman / artist is going to reveal something grandiose. And it's this giant tech demo all basically invented to maybe not necessarily trap. I mean, this isn't spoilers for the game because, he has his own things, but it's in the movie, in Batman Forever, it's to, trap Bruce Wayne and get him to try out the box and extract his thoughts. But I love that. Like, I just love this whole setting. I know, weird comparison, but check it out. But I love this because, man, Edward and Bruce at this point, I love their interactions. Because, again, this is when a lot of the dichotomy of the film starts to really come together, where you really see kind of the two sides of the coin, as it were, of Batman and Edward, and even Batman and Robin, of Two-Face and Edward. Like, this is a movie about duos and about duologies and about two characters and how they can reflect each other, and I think that's super cool.
Are we ready to jump ahead to Halloween?
Halloween! It's a Halloween movie!
Okay, so it is absolutely crazy to me that immediately after this movie, I thought they might have been connected, since I knew that The Long Halloween was a comic book, came out in the 90s. It was actually 96. Batman Forever came out in 1995, so it predated this. But this was secretly a Halloween movie because the last act of the movie, in a sense, takes place on Halloween night.
Yes, trick or treat.
Which is funny because it fits with Batman Returns being a Christmas movie.
Yeah, there you go. The scene where the Riddler goes into Wayne Manor and just blows up the Batcave with all of his, there's cartoon sound effects going as he's, tossing his bombs. He's, voguing the entire time. It is absolutely, we've mentioned it already, but it is super queer. But, even more so at this point. He's in a freaking leotard, sparkly, or not quite a sparkly leotard yet, but, he's in his, green leotard covered in the question marks, tossing bombs everywhere, posing in front of the explosions. It's beautiful. It's great.
It's The Mask meets Beetlejuice, and in the scene, he says the words joygasm. Which...
Yes! He says joygasm. He just says that.
I can't believe Riddler's a Gen Zer.
But it's just so great because he's quipping, he's voguing, it's slapstick. And again, it is what I love about this. Again, two sides of the same coin. This Riddler, not Edward and Bruce, but Riddler and Batman. Riddler is this fabulous kind of super queer, leotard-clad, joking kind of guy, over the top. Whereas Batman is the chiseled, the Greek god, kind of the bear, as it were, in his skin-tight rubber, quipping, making jokes as Batman. They're not that different. They perfectly mesh together. And that's so interesting. Mirror images, They are mirror images.
They're even attached to kind of objects, in a sense. For Batman, it's his utility belt. And then for the Riddler, it's his cane that he is kind of attached to sort of his devices. They are very much technological villains.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and speaking of technological, man, the Riddler gets an LED suit covered in question marks.
Holy shit, this thing looks incredible.
I want one.
If I could get one prop from Hollywood, I never thought I would have an answer. Maybe this.
Yeah. And the laser question mark in the sky is also...
Yeah, that's fucking great.
How he forms a question mark over the bat signal to make a... Yeah, it's awesome.
God damn, though. I completely forgot... So as we're approaching the final scene, Batman and Robin need to get to Two-Face's hideout.
This is where we get the new bat suits where they show off Batman's ass. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Batman's ass. We get a scene where Riddler and Two-Face are blowing up bombs in the harbor in order to stop Batman and Robin on the boats. It is fucking great.
Oh, it's
while playing Battleship,
while
obviously.
playing Battleship. And I love this because it really shows that, Edward Nygma and the Riddler, he's just a child. He's sort of this TV-addled child at heart, just kind of so far gone that he doesn't even think about like the real world consequences of his actions because it might as well be a game to him.
There's a reference around the scene I completely forgot about until just now, by the way.
Yeah.
Where Batman and Robin get to an area, get to kind of the other side.
Holy rusted metal, Batman!
Yeah, like Robin says it, and then Batman just looks at him like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah,
and then Robin's like, "The metal here, it's full of holes."
Yeah,
like,
it's cute. It's a cute way to do the reference without going DMC Devil May Cry and making you feel stupid for laughing at it.
Yeah, no, like it doesn't feel like it's making fun of the 60s Batman as much as it is like, oh, well, wasn't this like a funny time?
Yeah. It's just a cute little reference. And hey, by the way, I love the Robin suit in this movie. I love that we get the real comic Robin suit. I love this rubber one that he wears. It looks more like the Nightwing suit, but it looks cool. It's still red. It's still yellow. It has the colors. I don't know. I like it. It's cool.
God. So I feel like once they get to the area, they get to like the lair, you could argue that they take care of Riddler and Two-Face pretty quickly.
Yeah. Robin gets his revenge, or at least starts to get his revenge. And it's funny because it feels really good for as much as the movie kind of tells you not to feel good about it.
Well, they do have the whole speech with Bruce where he says, you know what? You go your own path. It is your choice, not mine, which I fucking adored.
Yeah, I loved that. And in the end, what Robin chose was not to kill Two-Face, but to put him in jail, to rescue him and put him in jail, which, is kind of some form of justice.
What I do love, though, they don't go out without going out in style because they blow up everything in this fucking lab.
Oh yes, and it is explosions. It is spectacle.
Colors go ape shit in this, and it's like, fuck yeah, I love you.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing is Two-Face gets this great line after Robin rescues him, which is oh noble, stupid but noble. And that's how he ends up capturing Robin. And we get to one of the big climax of the scene of the movie where Batman goes and finds final form Riddler, who is in this sparkly leotard, hair sticking straight up, flaming red. Oh, it's so freaking cool, man. He's surrounded by question marks. He has this opera mask on that's glittery silver.
There's like a little question mark on his glasses. It's great.
Yes. For if knowledge is power, then a god am I. And he just man, that is right up there with everything M. Bison says in the Street Fighter movie. I love that shit so much. Give me villains with these crazy over-the-top, oh, hell yeah, god power monologues. I love that shit. I eat it straight up. Thank you, Joel.
And if there was any question whether or not this was a film about Bruce and Chase or Bruce and Robin, I will say they do make it a point to have both be important.
Yeah, and
but they have Chase and Robin fall from the platform, and they rescue Bruce rescues Chase first.
Yeah.
Very early on, but the longer dive, the bigger scene is him going and saving Robin.
Yeah, and that's what's so great is that because this is when you start to really get through a lot of what this movie is, because it's basically a movie about forcing someone to make a choice that they don't have to make. Think about this, because basically, with the Riddler, with Edward, and he's kind of fully devoted himself at this time to the Riddler, and he's saying, listen, Bruce, Batman, you have Robin in one tank, you have Chase Meridian in the other. Are you going to choose between Bruce and Batman? And the idea is, why should I have to choose? Why should I only be my public face? Why can't I be my public face and who I am at night? Why can't both of those be part of me? And, and I'm going to say, you look at this, I'm sorry, Joel, love you, buddy, but you can absolutely read this as an interesting kind of exploration of queerness and bisexuality and, just in general of, your personal and private life, again, the fetishistic aspect of, the rubber suit of, think about this man who is, forced to be one thing in the light and then, only truly feels happy and ready to make jokes once the lights go down, think about all of that and how it all comes together in this final scene, which is why fuck everyone who hates this last scene. Fuck you, Doug Walker. Eat fucking shit. Two-Face and the Coins is fucking awesome because what is the thing that fucking gets Two-Face in the end? He is someone who is so absolutely determined to be bound by the laws of the binary that even he, when surrounded by these coins that can only tell him yes or no, like he feels compelled to stick to this even if it means his death. This is great. This is fucking great because I'm sorry if you don't like this as much as I did, but I grew up hearing that this scene sucked, that, this was a stupid death. Why did Two-Face die like this? Fuck you. This is everything the movie is about. And it's great because Two-Face in the end is someone who is so absolutely consumed by heads or tails. You don't have to pick. You can pick and. You can pick and.
Fuck yes. I love that. Yeah. They force a fucking Sophie's Choice with Robin and Chase, and it just ends up blowing up in their face for the villains. It's fucking great. And then, right at the end, they go ahead and check on Riddler. He's managed to survive everything. Mm-hmm. He looks pretty fucked up.
And this scene is genuinely horrifying, and I loved it.
Do you want to say the quote or should I?
You go for it.
Riddler looks at Bruce with his face pretty fucked up.
Yeah, because he's like, basically the box has been destroyed and all the brainwaves that he's been siphoning from Gotham have kind of left him and basically turned him into this shell of a man.
He's all his clothes are torn and he's saying, "Why can't I kill you? Too many questions. Too many questions."
And he looks up, and we see that same shot that young Bruce saw, in his flashback, of the bat that, drove him to become Batman, just in the silhouette. And it's and he just, unlike Bruce, who learned to embrace that creature, it just terrifies Edward. To the point that that's the last thing that just breaks his mind.
I have to wonder if that was a leftover idea from Scarecrow.
Yeah.
If this was always kind of the plan, but it eventually found its way onto Riddler, because the idea of Bruce putting the fear into Scarecrow is such a fucking obvious way to wrap that up, but it works perfectly here too.
It works great here, yeah. That's the thing, absolutely. I think that it actually works more metaphorically here versus literally with what it would have been with Scarecrow or ironically with Scarecrow. Whereas this, it's much more of just, again, those two sides of because in the end, Edward couldn't choose, or was forced to choose, and it's great. It's great. I really, really love it. It's a genuinely scary and interesting and kind of emotional scene all at once. And I thought it was an incredible, both of these villains, how they end up finding their fate is awesome.
So let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
Final couple scenes. We do check on Riddler in Arkham Asylum,
which looks great. That thing looks straight out of the comics.
Nigma is convinced now he's Batman.
Yes.
Because his brain is just even more fried. The Arkham Asylum psychiatrist turns out to be a Dr. Burton.
Yeah, that was clever because we saw him. We were like, "Oh, is that Dr. Crane?" Nah, but that's a cute reference.
And then we end on a closing shot of Batman and Robin running to the camera in front of the bat signal.
Yeah, it's great. Cut to credits.
Fucking amazing. And we're hit with two great songs to end this. U2's Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me, and Seal's Kiss from a Rose.
Now, before we get to Kiss from a Rose, you mentioned some stuff in the credits. What I noticed was that one of the henchmen was played by Don the Dragon Wilson, who some of you may know, some of you probably don't, but we know him as the voice of New York Ninja in the Vinegar Syndrome release New York Ninja that they had to redub. And they got Don the Dragon Wilson, great stuntman. That was a treat to see his name. Now,
Well, we need to remember this when we do the 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon episode. Connect New York Ninja, Beverly Hills Ninja, and Batman Forever.
yes.
Okay.
So, Kiss from a Rose, what a beautiful song.
Absolutely.
Now, I was under the mistaken impression that this song was made for this movie, but you corrected me. It's actually much more interesting. So why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. I'd love to tell this story. And this was something that I don't even think was public knowledge, but is a story that Seal himself made sure to mention pretty recently after Joel's passing. We'd always talk about how Joel nails his soundtracks. This is really no exception.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was Seal's second album was considered a flop when it came out. And that's the one where Kiss from a Rose was on.
Mm-hmm.
Joel actually contacted Seal asking for a song to put over a love scene between Batman and Chase. He did this because he was such a huge fan of like Seal's first album.
Yeah.
So Seal didn't really have time to record something new, and he was already working on a third album. But, you know, the manager of Seal sent a copy of the album and highlighted Kiss from a Rose as a potential song to listen to. So Joel listened to it, and, you know, the song didn't really work for the scene in question when they put it over it, but Joel's told Seal that he loved it so much that he put it over the ending credits, and then he offered to direct a music video for Seal with the song. They didn't re-record the song or anything for it. He just made a brand new music video 1 year later for Kiss from a Rose, this time over Batman footage. And, you know, that really is the rest of the story for how that got put into the movie. But it was a song that, at its hottest when it first came out, was at the Euro charts at 72. And then it gets released on the Batman album, and it gets bumped all the way up to fucking 12.
Yeah.
Not to mention, it hit U.S. billboards for the first time, and it hit it at number 1.
Oh, that's awesome.
He won 3 Grammys that year as a result of Batman Forever, including Record of the Year and Song of the Year.
That's so cool, man.
And you know what? I'm going to say on rewatch, I just have to admit, I still love this movie.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. This is the first time I had ever seen this movie. And man, it's so refreshing to watch something that is so certain of what it is. And it's kind of the same. This is a crazy thing to compare it to a movie that we watched on this very podcast, Beverly Hills Ninja. You want to talk about 2 movies that, for all their issues that they may have, are done by people who very clearly have a lot of love for the source material that they're, you know, inspired by, and are clearly like just putting their whole heart into a lot of it. I love movies that are just really devoted to themselves.
I can't believe it proved itself to be even better than I remembered.
Yeah, I admit I was not expecting to enjoy this so much. I really wasn't. I'm not going to say, you know, oh, it's, you know, forgotten masterpiece, 10 out of 10, best movie I've seen all year. But, I mean, it's better than a lot of the movies I've seen all year.
I want to put this into perspective for everybody.
Yeah.
Joel had maybe one of the hardest jobs in the entire world with this. He had to follow Tim Burton, and also at the same time, not make a serious Batman at WB's wishes. And, you know, I genuinely thought he nailed it.
Yeah.
Which is why it just fucking frustrates me whenever I see people who write off Forever. And, you know, they also, with it, they feel it right to just mock Joel.
Yeah.
And disregard his other work, saddle him with the reputation of the man who ruined the Batman series. You cannot even, it was insane. You look at comments when Joel Schumacher passed away, there's so much that mentions him as the guy who ruined Batman. Fucking frustrating.
Yeah, it's horrible.
There's one scene, I'm sorry if I have to mention this, Aaron, but literally there's this one scene in the new Batman adventure that I just have to bring up because I straight up hate it.
Oh no, it basically ruins for me an almost perfect episode of a great show.
And some people may know what this one is, some people may not, or if you have seen it, you might not remember it. It is kind of a throwaway bit. One of the episodes is about kids in Gotham, each telling each other rumors about what they've heard about Batman, their own perceptions. And it is really a fun episode. And then there's one joke in it where they pass by a fashion store. There's a blonde kid standing outside of it with a pink scarf who he's wrapping himself in. Obviously, it's like a woman's scarf. The kid butts into the conversation as they mention their perception of Batman. And then he says, oh, I love Batman. All those muscles, that tight rubber armor, and that flashy car. I hear it can drive up walls. And then one of the kids just passively aggressively responds, "Sure, Joel." And it's not like they went out of their way to be horrific with that line, but if it doesn't leave just the worst taste in my mouth, because if they want to just make a joke calling attention to Schumacher having outlandish ideas about Batman, whatever, right? But they couldn't do it without calling attention to the fact that Schumacher was a gay man. That's
and
fucking
a fashion
sad.
designer as well. Like straight up, there's no plausible deniability here, and it's really, really frustrating, and it sucks. And it sucks because this is such an interesting film that has beautiful ideas about who Bruce Wayne versus Batman is, and is interested in exploring every facet of that. And it sucks to hear it boiled down to gay jokes and the muscles and the rubber armor and to hear it so blatantly brushed off when even again popular critics at the time thought that was interesting. Like that's the thing that's driving me crazy. Like whatever the hell the perception has become when people like fucking Doug Walker and them are just like it's like it sucks. It does, and it does leave a bad taste in the mouth, which is very unfortunate.
Thankfully, it seems like this film has gotten re-examined. I actually want to shout out the attempts to restore a darker cut of the film, titled The Schumacher Cut. So since Joel's passing in 2020, Goldsman, I mentioned him earlier, Goldsman and many others have been trying to get the extended edition of Batman Forever edited and distributed by Warner Brothers. Kevin Smith, the director and friend of Joel Schumacher, had an entire podcast where he watched Joel Schumacher's original cut and he went over all of it that was cut. So I'm not going to go into it here. I think some of it had potential and some of it seems insane. But either way, I would just love for it to exist in this world. Allegedly, all it would take is about $1 million to edit it, which is more money than I have.
Yeah, so...
But the biggest thing that's getting in the way, according to Goldsman, is just the constant reshuffling of power of Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I mean, with Zaslav at the head, I mean, things are difficult right now.
There's been updates for this as recent as, like, when we dropped the podcast for Falling Down. So it is still an ongoing thing. I'll give you any updates on the campaign that I can find on our final episode.
Because didn't Vera Drew of The People's Joker actually watch the Schumacher cut? Or at least...
Yes, she actually mentions this in her review of it on Letterboxd. So I don't really know the story there, but she did say she prefers it. So I'm fascinated to eventually see it.
Absolutely. I mean, if I liked this, I can't wait to see. I mean, I hope that it joins other great, rescued director's cuts, like the extended Super Mario Brothers movie. We love that one. Or especially Nightbreed director's cut. Like, there's the Richard Donner cut of Superman. So it's not impossible.
Yeah, no. And I would encourage anyone who's interested in this, check out the hashtag Release the Schumacher Cut. Unlike the Snyder Cut, which I'm not going to talk down on that at all. I'm happy for everybody who's a fan of Zack Snyder that it got made. But this is something that already exists. They don't have to shoot anything extra for it. People have seen it. All it needs is to be edited and distributed at this point. And I would love to be one of the people to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And next year would be a perfect time to release it, too. We're approaching the film's 30-year anniversary, so we picked this at a perfect time.
Hey, I'm going to say this. Here, I'll lay this down. If they release the Schumacher cut, let's watch it and let's do a bonus episode.
Fuck yes. As for me, God, just to sum up my feelings, I still really appreciate Batman Forever. It's not my favorite. I mentioned what my favorites are. Batman Returns, the Lego Batman movie. I think they did a better job at, creating an interesting film for me and also for Batman's arc. But fuck me if Joel doesn't fucking knock it out of the park with this one still.
Yeah. I think it's a movie that's unlike any other, and you're not going to get another movie like this, and I think that it's great that we did.
All right. Next episode, we're jumping almost 10 years later for Joel's swan song to screenwriting, and I could not be more excited.
Oh, I'm so excited.
So for Phantom of the Opera, I saw the original musical on Broadway proper. You saw it live.
I've seen it on Broadway.
And you've seen the live recording and the theatrical form many, many times.
Many, many times. In fact, it's funny because Batman and Robin was the first movie I ever saw in theaters. The Phantom of the Opera is the movie I've seen the most times in theaters. So I am super stoked for this. So keep an eye out for that one. In the meantime, I want to tell everyone to check out our website. Again, for all of our previous episodes, subscribe to us. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. Go to armbarstudios.com. If we get any major updates about the Schumacher cut, we'll probably post there, or anything else. We toss up news updates every so often there. Follow us on Letterboxd. Mandy is NB Witch, and I am Hard Luck Aaron. And until then,
3, 2, 1, roll credits.
It's like, were they trying to just ruin this game? Just flat out just fuck it up? Well, they did. Batman Forever, it sucked back then, and it sucks forever. Batman.
Roll Credits is produced by Armbar Studios and is part of the Aaron and Mandy Network. The intro and outro music is provided by Daniel Vodovos, available on Bandcamp. For more information on all of our projects, visit armbarstudios.com.